Sosuke Aizen, Shinigami who outclassed everyone in his pure abilities, intellectual quotient, and his ability to basically charm everyone. Not charm, but like his charismatic personality, which pretty much convinced most of his army to join him. What would happen if the same Sosuke Aizen, with all of his feats, were to train Bell to be his successor? How would this change the story of Danmachi? Well, we'll be going over that in What If Bell Wielded Kyoka Suigetsu, the movie. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. What would happen if Bell were to receive a certain sword and be able to use the same powers as a certain someone? Now, the certain someone would be none other than Sosuke Aizen, the person who deceived all of the Gote 13 and was on par with intelligence to Urahara Kisuke. Or, I mean, at least a little bit lower, since he stated himself that Urahara was smarter. He's pretty much on par with Urahara himself. So, yeah, we're going to be going over that in this What If. Honestly, I actually haven't done the Danmachi What If. So, like, it's going to be the first time. And, hopefully it goes well. But without further ado, guys, roll that intro. So, we pretty much start this What If when Bell had just came to Orario. He had been rejected by multiple familias, and he didn't really have like any of the powers Aizen had yet, since he's going to be getting that soon, which we'll be going over in a few seconds or minutes. But pretty much he would be walking around as he would come upon a welding shop. As he would walk up to it, and he would pretty much see this blade. It would have been the same Suba, the green Suba, which is pretty much the handle, if you guys don't know what a Suba is. And it would have the same delicate, short blade of it. And for some reason, Bell was very enticed to pick it up. So he would, pick up the sword as he would start examining it, and the shop owner was kind of shocked. This was the cursed sword from a millennia ago. So pretty much what will be happening is people like Bleach characters like Aizen or the Soul King, like the events that took place, it'll be like thousands, maybe millions of years before the events of Danmachi. I know that doesn't make sense, since Danmachi seems more of a regressed society, not actual like modernized, but just roll with it. As he'd pick up the sword, as he would look at the shopkeeper, as he would say, so what's wrong? As pretty much he would say, that's the cursed sword of Sosuke Aizen. No one has actually been able to hold it and live, but it seems you're quite compatible for it. So, would you like me to explain what the sword does? Since the sword abilities were explained throughout the history of, the world itself. And he would explain that the sword has this ability called Ultimate Hypnosis, which pretty much, once casted, puts the user or puts the opponent under their hypnosis. And before Aizen or Sosuke, depends on, you could say Sosuke, you could say Aizen, I don't care, but pretty much he would start to explain to the Bell that back then he would have to say shatter Kyoka Suigetsu, but due to his evolution now you don't even have to say it. You just look at your opponent and he's under your Kyoka Suigetsu. As the shop owner would say, try it on me. As pretty much Bell would look at the sword, as he would feel this this wave of power course into his veins, as pretty much he would look towards the shop owner, as he would try to make the shop owner hallucinate that all the gods and goddesses appeared in front of him, which he would do exactly that. The shop owner would start to hallucinate as he would open his eyes, and he would see all the gods and goddesses there, like Hestia, Lady Hephaestus, or Hermes. As he would say, oh, that's an interesting ability, being able to, I guess, manipulate my perception to hallucinate me seeing all the gods and goddesses. As he would say, yeah, that's exactly what I did. As he would sheathe the blade, and obviously the effect would wear off. I guess being able, if you sheathe the blade, you would kind of cancel the ability out, and he would actually have the intention of canceling said ability. But after like him, like, you know, getting the weapon and all, he would head back, and he'd be walking through, and he just walked up to another familiar, offered to join. It was one of the weaker familiars, because when he first came into Wario, he started to go for like the Freya familia and the Loki familia, and they kind of rejected him. So pretty much he would come along, Hestia, and he would still join her familia just like per usual. So when Hestia was giving Belle her Felna, or the blessing, something weird would happen. He would have suddenly gained all these magic abilities which were all unknown, as pretty much specifically the ability was to make, I guess, magic from your soul energy in a sense, because Keto itself, you're literally just imagining something and it's coming into life itself. For example, Haru number 99, Koryo Tenmetsu, you're literally imagining 5 dragons coming from the ground. That's you're just manifesting your soul energy. So Belle would be able to get access to that, and it would just be defined as something else. As Hestia, remember, a few million years ago, there was people who managed to do said abilities, and she was quite shocked. And the fact that he has a sword which puts someone under like complete hypnosis. So let's just say the usual Belle we know is not gonna be as, I guess, he's gonna have more charisma. Honestly, I like charisma for some reason. Being able to control what someone does just from the tone of your voice, it's a wonderful ability. So pretty much Hestia would tell Belle that he can make whatever he wants with magic. If he wanted to, he can make a dragon or fire, I guess you can say, or any elemental. You just have to put your mind to it. As Belle would say, yeah, I'm gonna go practice that. As Hestia would wait up for me. As honestly, not gonna lie, like I'm still kind of confused why Hestia like wears sandals. And even though she's not allowed to go to the dungeon and all, and there wouldn't be any purpose, I don't know. Some of the gods and goddesses, random tangent, they kind of just give me a weird vibe, honestly. And most I kind of just like, when I first watched it, I kind of despised the system of gods and goddesses. Small tangent though, like I said. It's just how like after they defeat the dragon, the black dragon, I think they're called, they just go up, and I guess the humans would have passed their test, and it kind of seemed pointless, but it is what it is. So Belle would spend, I guess, maybe the next 1 week, like the next week or 2 weeks, just training on his magic abilities, being able to, I guess, number one, gain his firebolt, since he's still in the Hestia familia, I guess, and he also still imagined having fire and lightning, but this would just be more powerful due to him, I guess, being able to access his own soul energy. But we're gonna go to a specific time. Now, Belle would have been, I guess, doing magic, I guess, or keto it's called, and he would have been completely depleted of his energy when suddenly he would pass out. Obviously, he was depleted of his energy. So what happened is he would appear in this mindscape, and obviously he would look towards his right, and he would see this weird guy sitting in a chair, and his clothes were oddly weird in that time, since nobody really had his fashion. Obviously, this is Aizen. He's sealed to his chair. That's what I mean by chair. I'm probably gonna put a picture of Aizen. Like, I'm gonna crop it on the edit. So yeah, so you guys know what I'm talking about. Where pretty much Aizen would say, "Hello, Mr. Crenell." As obviously, since this time I'm gonna have it where Aizen, instead of like the actual Kyoka Suigetsu, if you actually search up Kyoka Suigetsu spirit, you actually see art where it is show Kyoka Suigetsu on the Bleach wiki. But in this time, I'm just gonna have actually like Aizen in this Zanpakuto, since he fused with his Zanpakuto, so it'd be more realistic if Aizen was there rather than Kyoka Suigetsu herself. So pretty much Aizen would say, hello, Mr. Cornell. I see you came upon my sword. And the fact that you managed to live even after the fact that, you're supposed to die unless you're worthy. So it seems I'm gonna have to like take care of you and train you in a sense. As he'd say, Bell would, say, yeah, that's cool and all, but like, what's your name? As he would like shake the back of his head. Like Bell would. As it would have been like a sweatshop in a sense. And he would say, forgive me for, not showing manners. So he would say, I'm Sosuke Aizen. As, Bell would kind of remember him from one of the stories back then. As Aizen, he remembered Aizen was like a criminal and all. And if you guys don't know, his sentence is up, by the way. Like, it's been like over 20,000 years. If you don't know, Aizen was sentenced to 18,800 years. Until he insulted the Central 46 judge, saying, hey, people like you declaring judgment on me, that's comical. And then he literally got 20,000 years. Like, broski, that guy was pressed. I'm just kidding. But basically, you remember that Aizen tried to take over the god who pretty much started all gods. This god obviously would have been the Soul King, the Prime Soul King. And he remembers stories about how the Soul King, the Ryu, pretty much became friends even with Ra, the sun god, the god of from Egyptian mythology. And pretty much Ra was stated to be one of the strongest gods ever, and for the Ryu to easily beat him and then befriend him, it was a feat by itself. And to see Aizen, someone who could actually take over the Soul King's place, was fascinating. As obviously how the gods and goddesses were created, it was because due to the lack of, presence in the Soul Society. They saw, they were created because there was basically no gods or deities there to basically keep order. So whoever was, present at that time created the gods and goddesses that we see in Danmachi to this day. So before I go any more tangent time, this is kind of like the introduction part. So if you guys like the series, obviously, it'll, receive good attention. But basically, Aizen would, start to explain that it appears like, someone's watching us. They would have a long conversation. As Bell would say, watching us? I don't see any reason for them to watch us. As Aizen would say, I'll deal with it. Obviously, the person who's watching him is none other than Freya. Since he, since I always get my pronouns wrong. But since she heard that Bell had received the sword of Sosuke Aizen, she was kind of interested in Bell himself. Obviously, Bell was already interesting due to the fact that he received the magic ability that pretty much gives you constant evolution. It's like limitless potential at that point. So Aizen would suddenly appear in front of Freya in the Tower of Babel. I think that's how I say it. But he would, he would then say, hello. As he would say, he would be interrupted by Freya saying, I know who you are, but still introduce yourself. As Aizen would say, comical. Because, comical, basically, it's funny how she thinks she can interrupt him, even though she's, weaker. Since, honestly, like I said, I didn't think I said this before, but if we're actually giving the gods and goddesses in Danmachi their mythological power, they would completely solo the Bleach verse. But we don't know their power levels, so for now, let's just say they're weaker than Aizen. I guess that's more of a logical point to say. As Aizen would then say, I see you take an interest in Bel Cornell, not specifically because of the sword he wields, but it seems you're interested in because of power he has within himself. But I see, I went through his memories and I can see he is the grandson of, the gods of all gods, Zeus. As, I kind of did a spoiler, but that's my bad. But basically, Freya would be surprised since nobody really knows that, only Hermes and herself, and maybe some other high-tier gods, like the god of all the dungeon, but never mind. But pretty much, Freya would be like, how do you know that? As Aizen say, I'm Sosuke Aizen, what do I not know? I went through Bel Cornell's memories since I am pretty much merged with his soul due to him holding my blade. I became attached to his soul. Don't don't think anything like that. But basically, he would say, I'm gonna warn you once and only once. I know what your plans are, or I can predict your plans, but I'm gonna say this right here. You should, back off. As Freya would, get up, as she would walk over to Aizen. As Aizen would get up, summon his sword. As they would kind of have a stare down with Aizen gaining his purple aura. As Freya would kind of try to use her charm on Aizen. But Aizen be like, interesting. You try to use your charm on me? I don't believe that works. Your charm only works on people who become infatuated with you, or the charm actually makes them infatuated with you. But I don't believe that parlor trick actually works on me. Throughout all the years I've been a Soul Reaper, I've seen many people who carry abilities like yours, but due to me having more soul energy than you, or mana in a sense, then your abilities won't work on me. I remember actually, Captain tried to actually erase me from existence using her Shikai's abilities. He would think in his head, obviously this would be, remember, Soifon, she tried to use her her Shikai's abilities. If you hit someone in the same place, if you sting them in the same place twice, they pretty much die. That didn't work on him. It's called Nigese Kitatsu, I think it's called. But it says like 2 stings. Never mind, I'm gonna stop myself. So, Aizen would output his pressure and use his soul manipulation in a sense, and existence erasure to pretty much output his killer intent on Freya. So Freya would start shaking and all, but she would still keep her mask, like her calm look. As Aizen would say, so I'm gonna leave now, but I'm gonna do notes. If I see any god or goddess go after Belle Cornell with intent to kill, just know he does have full power to kill you. Honestly, I'm gonna say this, Mrs. Freya or Miss Freya, you're not married. I don't think you would ever. Never mind. But no god or goddess actually matches the power of Mr. Cornell, which is why you all want him to defeat the Black Dragon. But without further ado, I'm gonna leave now. As he would disappear, as Freya, she would kind of be mad. This Suigetsu has definitely become a pain. So we then go back to Aizen. He appears back in Belle's mindscape, as he would say, so I dealt with our pesky spy, but let's continue with our training. As Belle would say, training? As he would say, yeah, you need to know how to wield my blade. So after this, they would start the training, and I'll do a time skip to the first episode where Belle's like in the dungeon. So this time he would still have his usual clothes. Number one, Aizen, I don't think Aizen is the type of person to wear armor. It's just like, it doesn't feel right in a sense to him. So honestly, if you guys are wondering how does Krozu like join the Familia, if basically Belle is like, hey, I want this armor, I mean, like, I guess I can still have him wear the armor, like, sometimes. It is light armor, it's not like heavy based armor, so it wouldn't be too much of a bore. And I guess Aizen would want Belle to wear more armor if they're going to the lower floors, like if they manage to get to like the 30th floor or something like that. So like I said, we'll time skip to the day of the first, like, the dungeon, when he first goes to the dungeon. So Hestia would have, I guess, had used her technique to basically talk with Belle when he's in the dungeon, and kind of like she did in canon, forgive me. Like I said, if I get my pronouns wrong, forgive me. I'm not good at pronouns, It's, yeah. But pretty much, Belle would, run into the dungeon as he would see a few monsters, kind of low level, as he would slice them down with Kyoka Suigetsu. And, he would start to go down the stairs slowly but surely, getting down to the 5th floor where all the Minotaurs were escaped to, since that Loki Familia were in the lower floors, but one of the Minotaurs managed to get up to the floors, which is how, I guess, Belle was saved by Eyes. But this time that's not happening. So Belle would then see a Minotaur, as, Hestia would then say, start to tell him what the Minotaur is, and that it's pretty strong. So if you defeat him, then, it's pretty praiseworthy. as Bell then put both of his hands on his sword, as he would, raise his sword above his head before then slicing down, as a huge beam of energy beam would escape from his blade. Pretty much, he's just like swiping the air, similar to that of Ichigo. Like when Ichigo was fighting Gijo, he says, "No, that wasn't Getsuga. I was just swiping the air by just using my Ryatsu." That's kind of what Bell did here, since obviously he was taught by Aizen to control your Ryatsu and use it to, I guess, enhance your sword's abilities. So he would then slice down the Minotaur as it would receive a cut on his chest. Not too deep, but it was pretty deep, before blood would spurt out the wound as the Minotaur would roar in agony, before it would rush towards Bell as his high-speed factor would kick in, as Bell would then dodge to the side using one of the newest technique he learned, which was Shunpo. And when he did the Shunpo, he would feel his lungs. They feel like they were getting shredded inside, since he's not really used to actually using Shunpo. So yeah, rip Bell. But basically, he would then take a few deep breaths as out of nowhere the Minotaur would appear in front of him. And I guess Bell would quickly react, but he wouldn't get injured either, so that's good. As he would slice down, kind of clashing with the Minotaur's hand, since the Minotaur was trying to like hit Bell, so like he kind of stopped it with his blade. Before then, he would appear like flash dead behind the Minotaur as a cut would, I guess appear on his neck, the Minotaur's neck, as he would fall down, as it would disappear into dust in a sense. Whatever the monsters turn into after they die, it's most likely just like their essence disappearing. As Bell would walk up to the Minotaurs where the Minotaur was, and he would see, I guess, if you defeat like a really high Minotaur or monster in the dungeon, they leave something behind, and you pick it up and you turn it in, and you get pretty good values for it. So a few minutes later, or a few seconds, Eyes would run in, as she would expect the Minotaur to be there, but he would she would then see like Bell standing over the Minotaur's, I guess, where the body was, as she would ask him, like, Bell, if he took down the Minotaur, as he says, "A Minotaur? What's a Minotaur?" He would kind of play dumb, as he would say, "I thought this was just a normal monster." As Eyes would say, no, it was a Minotaur from the 10th floor, as I'm very certain that actually the Loki familiar were in the 10th floor when the Minotaur got up, but I may be wrong. But if I'm wrong, then correct me. But basically, Eyes would be quite surprised. It looks like a level 1. Like, he looks like pretty new, and he does look like a level 1, which, he's like, she's right, since you have to defeat more monsters to level up, and since Bell, this is his first time, so obviously he's gonna be a level 1. So Eyes would say, "So how'd you defeat it?" As he would show his sword, and he says, "This is Kyoka Suigetsu." As Eyes would know the story, as he would say, "You mean that Kyoka Suigetsu?" As Bell would say, "Yeah, the legendary sword of Sosuke Aizen. I found it in the shop, and pretty much I didn't die from the curse, so it's proved that I was worthy for the blade." As pretty much Eyes would kind of ask to look at the blade, as he would hand over the blade, and she would start looking at it, kind of being surprised by the design of it, and it would look pretty good. Like, since Eyes is a swordsman and all, you would think a swordsman would look at other blades and kind of see the art, or not the art, but see the hidden beauty of a sword compared to people who don't use swords. So she would then say, "It looks elegant." She would think of the word, and she would hand it back, as Bell would say, "Thank you, Mrs. or Miss or Madam." No, I'm just kidding. But she would say Miss, as Eyes would respond, "Eyes Wallenstein." Some people say Wallenstein. I say Wallenstein. I'll say Wallenstein. I'll just say Eyes from now on, honestly. It's really easier. I should say, "Thank you, Mrs. Wallenstein." Or Miss. I always get Mrs. and Miss wrong. Mrs. means you're married. Never mind. Miss Wallenstein. Before then, he would walk out the dungeon. Pretty much earlier, he defeated a lot of monsters, so he got a lot of magical stones. So he would then head over to the guild when he would meet Aina. Obviously, Aina would obviously become his guild advisor in a sense, and she would then tell Bell if he wants to, I guess, trade in his magical stones for valleys, as she would also be surprised that Bell managed to take out a Minotaur only on the 5th floor, and this was his first time. As Ida would note that he seems to have a lot of potential, but she hopes that he's more careful, and pretty much she would deposit the magical stones and get about, I'd say, 10,000 valleys, since he did defeat a Minotaur. So that's he got himself pretty good valleys, and he turned in the I guess the remainings of the Minotaur, getting himself another 15,000 valleys before he would walk out with a sacket of valleys. He would then proceed to go back to the Hestia Familia, as he would tell Hestia what happened, and Hestia would kind of be surprised, and she would kind of just act like her usual self, being completely infatuated with Bell. Obviously, I don't know why. It's something Bell carries within his character. Broski is like the Mr. Steal Your Girl, but Broski never mind. Now, pretty much Bell would sleep for it would have been the evening-ish, since he did spend the whole day in the dungeon, as he would ask Hestia if you want to go to the tavern, as he pretty much earlier that morning he would have met Sir, and she would have pretty much gave him that lunch, just in the canonical timeline. So Hestia would be I'm down, and they would head over to the tavern. Now once they would walk in, Sir would be I knew you would come, since Sir would say if you come back at night, because Sir wanted Bell to spend a lot of money, since it's kind of just a business thing. So him and Hestia would go in, as obviously I don't think there's a goddess discount, but if there is, Bell is getting that. It's not much of a discount though, but I'm kind of I'm gonna add more stuff into this, I'm kind of being creative and all. As they would walk in and they would sit down by the bar, as pretty much Mamma Mia saved them a seat at the bar. Just hearing the name Mamma Mia, that's just kind of funny, not gonna lie. Basically, they would sit down and they would order their stuff, with Hestia, I guess, eating a lot, since, as you know, every time Hestia goes to a public event, she turns into never mind, I'm not gonna say that, but basically she eats a lot for some reason, and obviously this means that Bell would obviously order a lot due to her eating a lot, and due to him eating a lot. He did spend the whole day in the dungeon, so he was famished. We would then hear someone talking shit in the background. Obviously this would be none other than Bet. So we see with Bet, he would start to say some level 1 came in here and pretty much took our prey, as he would start to talk shit about how Bell pretty much took his kill. I mean, that's Bet, so I would expect. Because the Loki Familia were hunting down all the Minotaurs, and in Bet's eyes, Bell just took the last kill for the Minotaur, so they lost out on all the possible magical stones. So Bell would kind of get up. He would kind of be a little annoyed. He doesn't have he's not like Aizen's reincarnation. He's just a student of Aizen in a sense. I want to do something other than reincarnation, because Meister told me that if you do reincarnation, you're simply just replicating the personality of the character onto the character that you're doing the reincarnation for, so there wouldn't be much character development. But if I kept his personality and gave him the power, he would receive much character development, doing his character changing due to him getting that power, and now I'm on the tangent. But pretty much Bell would get up, as he would walk over to the table Bet was sitting at, and the rest of the Loki Familia, as he would say, so who's this person? Obviously kind of being sarcastic, saying that was pretty much him. As Bet would be hey, it's you took our, kill. As pretty much Bell would say, honestly, I mean, if you're that weak and you let a Minotaur, escape onto the 5th floor, people could have died, come on. I think you should just swallow your pride. I mean, if you really want to, we can take this outside and I'll show you what power I carry. It's pretty much Bet would be getting up, as the rest of the Loki family would kind of sit him down, mostly Riveria and the rest of the Loki Familia, saying, because Broski was drunk in one drink, as Bell would kind of make a remark saying, it seems you can't hold your alcohol. You had 1 cup and you're already flustered. I mean, obviously, because alcohol, never mind. And, Bet would kind of grunt, as, Bell would then say, well, I'm gonna go now. As pretty much, I guess what happened was they kind of just did a short session of bantering, and Bell would go back and sit down in the seat next to Hestia, as they would continue to eat their dinner before after that, they would head back to the church they were residing in. As Bell then looked on the outside, as he would say, we need to get some more members, and we should probably get a better familia house. This house, I don't think that works, since it's only me and you, and it works for both of us, but like if we invite more members, we're gonna need to upgrade this place. As he would then tell Hestia that I'm gonna go to the dungeon a lot, and I'm gonna like get a lot of valleys so we can renovate this place. As Hestia would be like, kind of excited and all, since she liked to see the fact that this church gets like upgraded. Like, think of it, if this church actually gets into like a whole ass mansion or something like that, similar to the season 3 Familia house, that'd be pretty cool. Like, more members would be prompted to join. So yeah, so Belle and Hestia would fall asleep. As that'll be the end of this part. Honestly, I didn't really go over much. I think I only went over like episode 1 or 2, I think. So like there's a lot to go over. But without further ado, guys, I hope you enjoyed this what if, and I hope you have a great day. But without further ado, guys, roll that outro. What if Sosuke Aizen were to become the apprentice of our well-known white hair and red-eyed protagonist, Belle Cornell? And what would happen to the story? We'll be going over that today for part 2 of What If Belle Wielded Kyoka Suigetsu. But without further ado, guys, I have nothing else to say but roll that intro. We then pretty much resume this what if after Belle had just pretty much beat a Minotaur, and he had just woke up the next day with Hestia still, I guess, sleeping on his chest, like in canon. As he would smile at her before then getting up. He would then tell Hestia, after making her breakfast, that, and also eating some of his own, I mean, obvious, he would then head over and tell her that he's gonna go train for a few hours before heading to the dungeon. As she would I guess say goodbye in a sense. I don't know why I got too technical there, but Belle would head out to a training ground, or I guess just like an open field. As once he would get there, he would start to meditate, as our boy Aizen would start to manifest. As he wouldn't do much strength training, really. He would just pretty much just start, I guess, give Belle some advice. He would start to teach Belle the ways of how to be Aizen. I mean, I'm just kidding about the joke. But basically, he starts teaching him stuff like how to expect a betrayal, how to become, their goal. The goal is to become stronger than gods, because Aizen knows what's happening. Once Belle defeats the Black Dragons, all the gods and goddesses will go back up, and obviously Belle would hate that, because number one, he had grown quite a bond with Lady Hestia, and it would kind of be weird if he just I guess had that all disappear. So Aizen made a plan, saying, so in order, once you beat the Black Dragons, they all go up, right? What if we just sealed the Black Dragons, similar to the seal, the one that I was sealed, and the one that's in, sealing me to this chair, but way better? What if you seal them into a different pocket dimension, no way of them getting back, and the gods and goddesses will constantly stay here, but it would just be much better in general. As Belle would say, yeah, that does seem like a good idea, but what if some gods and goddesses wanted to go up, since they are some gods who don't really like being here? So maybe if we, I guess, took over the gods of all gods, and I am the grandson of Zeus, it could definitely be possible. If I were to become, I guess, the leader of all these gods, I could change, I guess, the world itself. As Aizen says, see, you're already learning my ways. As Aizen would start to tell Belle stories of how his soul society was, and the reason why he wanted to take over. The reason why Aizen wanted to take over is because he despised the Soul King itself. He despised, I guess, the system. It's like, for example, there's a president ruling your country, or whatever, I guess, political system there is, and he's your ruler, and you hate him, you despise him, you don't like the way he rules, so obviously you're gonna go against that. So it's similar to what Aizen does. but pretty much Bell will have like an easier time since he does have like Aizen's power, and he still has his unlimited potential, which is like the magical trick, which he magic in a sense, which gives him unlimited potential. But I think I already said that. And pretty much after his whole training arc, or not training arc, but like I guess sitting down and being taught by Aizen, he would then head home, where he would then I guess walk home before then getting his stuff ready, since he got up pretty early, like 6 a.m. I guess. So now he's heading over to the dungeon. Now once he would get there, he would hear a voice behind him as he would turn around, and he would see, I guess, a short girl who looked more like a Palem, I think it's called. It's like those, never mind. It's like those, I guess you can, I'm talking about Lily. So pretty much Lily would come up and she would ask if, he needed a support, since it looks like he was going into the dungeon. As, Bell would kind of smile and say, yeah, sure. As, pretty much they would together, Lily would join and become a supporter of Bell as they would go into the dungeon. Now they would go into probably, I'll say maybe the 6th floor, and there would be a bunch of minotaurs and other creatures, not minotaurs, but like, I guess like creatures who are almost like minotaurs, or like they're not as strong as minotaurs, but they're pretty strong. They're stronger than the usual monsters, as they'd be down there as a bull-headed monster would run towards him, as Bell would kind of grab it by its horns before then slamming it back on the ground, before trying to a new Keto technique. He has been using his sword. I think he feels like he's been relying on his sword, like the hypnosis ability. So he would sheath his sword as he would pretty much go through a few incantations, as he would then say, "Hado number 90, Kurohitsugi," as a huge black box or coffin would form around all of the monsters, kind of closing in. Like once the box would close, you would see all the monsters. They would start to disintegrate from being killed. Maybe about 50 monsters would die from this attack. As Bell would then take a few deep breaths, he would walk up as he would take a few cores from the monsters that disintegrated before he would, I guess, pick up the magical the magical cubes that you get from killing a monster. Damn, I'm forgetting myself already. So pretty much after Bell would kill all the monsters in that floor, he would go back up, since it's kind of been a few hours already and they killed a lot of monsters. So they would deposit it as Lily, he would give Lily 50%, and this would start like the whole Lily kind of, I guess, scamming Bell, taking 70, almost 80, as Bell wouldn't really care. He just needs to get money to renovate the church, and in about a week he got that money. The church was, I guess, pretty easy to renovate. It's not like other familiar houses, so it took about, I guess, 75,000 valas, as they would go to the god of architecture and they would ask him to help renovate the house, and they would gladly agree with the price he gave the god of architecture. So then the church would get renovated. It would look much better, much cleaner, just all in all, just a better familiar house, as pretty much Aizen would kind of tell Bell that he should go get some armors, because they're gonna head, one day they're probably gonna head over to the middle floors and they're gonna need it, or he's gonna need it. As Bell would be like, okay, Mr. Aizen. I would just think that Bell would call him Mr. Aizen, it would kind of feel weirder if you said Aizen Sensei. But pretty much he would head over to the the shop where you buy weapons and armor. He would go to the welder, and he was looking around and he couldn't find the armor he always used to get that was about 9,000 valas. So he would ask the shop owner, he's like, hey, where's Ralph Crozo's armor? As obviously right next to him was the man himself, Ralph Crozo. So pretty much what happened is Crozo would offer, saying, hey, I'll give you pretty good armor if you let me join your familia, or not your familia, but let me join you on your adventure, in a sense. As Bell would obviously gracefully agree, accept his offer, as he would get some pretty top-notch armor. pretty much Bell would be told by Krozo about why he doesn't do magical weapons, saying that he likes it when people actually see the sword or the weapon as their partner. As pretty much Bell would then unsheath the sword, and he says, well, "This is my partner. His name is Sosuke Aizen." As pretty much Krozo would be like, "That Sosuke Aizen? You mean the legendary sword Kyoka Suigetsu? The one that Sosuke Aizen used to basically deceive God himself?" I mean, that's just a rumor, but yeah, Bell would respond, "Yeah," as Krozo would ask if he can see the sword, similar to that of Aiz when Aiz asked to see the sword, and surprisingly, he would I guess he would feel the sword, and he would gain that feeling he gets when he's like in a open field of just flowers. Obviously, since the sword is literally translated to mirror flower, water moon. I think I got that right. As of course, like when you feel it, you start to get that flower vibe. Then you get like, you see a few butterflies in a sense, because as Aizen had the quote for the precipice, as he basically wants to be the butterfly who can fly off the precipice with no fear, while others will stop at the edge due to fear of falling. So pretty much Krozo would join the group, and the whole like Lily betraying them, that didn't really happen, because when that scene happened, Bell didn't have trouble defeating the monsters, and pretty much I guess Bell would use the quote that Aizen used. It's not the betrayal you see that's so it's the I'm gonna try my best to remember it. The betrayals you see is trivial, but what's truly frightening is the betrayal you cannot see. As he would walk up to Lily, and he would give her like a stare before patting her on the head, saying, "I've always seen your betrayal, but it's okay. I can see you're definitely in desperation. But next time, you should always ask for my help. You are my supporter. I have to support you as well, not just like one way." As he would know this is from the Soma Familia, the captain, and he realizes he needs to deal with the Soma Familia, and I guess put the Soma Familia back what they were, since like the god is literally just making an alcohol, just chilling at that point. So pretty much we'll be going over, I guess, the arc where like the monsters suddenly released, and like from the Ganesha side of the dungeon. So pretty much, I guess, Hestia and Bell would then, I guess, take down the monster. I can't remember, the Silverback, I think it's called. So we'll be going over that. So Bell, after getting out the dungeon, he and the rest of this, like Krozo, Lily, and Hestia, they would have went out to the tavern, obviously eating a lot and drinking a lot. And if you guys don't know, I'm not gonna be like the anime where like basically Bell's like 14. Nah. Like pretty much Bell will, I guess, it'll be his manga age, which is 19. No, I think it's light novel who is 19, manga who's 17. No, manga he was 19, light novel who was 17. So he'll be 19 in this. I know I should have said that at the beginning, but I kind of forgot. But I never really thought that age in Danmachi was actually like a problem. But basically, honestly, like a lot of people have been, small tangent by the way, a lot of people have been telling me that Hestia is kind of annoying, but like I legit don't see a problem with her. Like I don't know why, man. Something's wrong with me. No, I'm just kidding. But basically, I guess due to Bell's unexpected age up, he can I guess be more mature than usual, and the fact that he's like directly being taught by Aizen, that means like it's pretty good. He's mature and he has a lot of charisma. So yeah, let me get back to the one. So they'd be like sitting down, as they would have been like kind of intoxicated, as they would have went back to the the Hestia Familia church, as they would have pretty much slept for the night. As the next morning they would have had like pretty bad headaches, as they would get up to head towards, they would have taken a break from the dungeon, as they would just kind of chill for the rest of the day, just as a friend group in a sense, as they would be walking around, and that's when they would hear a huge roar. Obviously they would turn around, and they would, I guess, see a huge silverback about a few 100 meters away, as Bell would tell like Lily and Krozo to, head the other way while he went to go deal with it, as he would tell Hestia, to come with him, as, they would go face off against the Silverback. So something weird would happen when, Bell would find the Silverback and start fighting him. For some reason, his sword attacks weren't actually piercing him, so he and Hestia had to run. So pretty much, Bell would be carrying, Hestia. I know that kind of sounds bullshit, the fact that, Bell has Aizen's powers, and yet he's he can't even pierce through the Silverback. It's simply because I guess his resolve isn't really refined as much as Aizen or any Shinigami, strong Shinigami character. So pretty much what would happen, it would come down to the moment where Bell and Hestia had nowhere to run. It was a dead end, where Hestia, what would happen is he would carry the sword, shakingly, as pretty much he would feel hands on, he would feel, I guess, someone grab his hands from behind, as pretty much this would be Hestia. What would happen is she would help him hold the sword, as for just a few seconds she would use her divine energy to, I guess, give Bell enough energy to swing his sword, as together it was similar to that of Kiraku and Nanao when Nanao was fighting Lilibaro. It's kind of like that. So Hestia would use her divine energy, to, I guess, infuse it into Bell, which she would infuse into the sword, as just for a few seconds Bell would transcend into that of a god, as he would then use his firebolt technique into a sword. He didn't really have time to focus it on much compared to the other Kido, but he still knows firebolt. So he would then swing his blade down, as a huge firebolt attack technique would come out of his sword, as he would slice vertically. What would happen is he would slice down. This would slice the Silverback in half, as you can see in the sky above. The clouds would start splitting apart, as it would quickly go from, I guess, the clouds would then be dispersed, as for a few seconds it would go from sunny to the moon would go to night for a second, as it would revert back. As pretty much what would happen is Bell would be seen after the attack, as he would be taking a few deep breaths, as his hand would have burn marks from using the firebolt technique, but it wouldn't be too bad. It would just been a few burns, as him and Hestia were defeated the Silverback, as pretty much they would kind of be congratulated yet scolded, but technically you can use your divine power. Gods and goddesses can use their divine power if they fear death, and obviously I guess that definitely counted in this situation. But basically that divine energy that Hestia poured into Bell would kind of, I guess, remain there in a sense, or it would diffuse into his usual spiritual pressure in a sense, since I guess Bell wielding Kyoka Suigetsu just gives him access to spiritual pressure, or you can just say mana. But after the whole incident, he would regroup with his the supporter, Lily and Krozo, as they would kind of just chill for the rest of the day. They really didn't do anything. Like I said, they were pretty, I guess, intoxicated. I don't want to say anything else that's inappropriate, so I'm just gonna say intoxicated, as they would kind of just chill for the rest of the day, just them being homies, as pretty much just would kind of develop their relationship as a familia, as this, I guess, the if you guys saw that filler episode where there was this, I guess, old man who used to be, I guess, in love with his goddess, as what would happen is her goddess died one day, and he was forced to live on his own for the rest of his life. Just know that something with that is gonna come up. Honestly, I'm kind of stuttering though, but just know that some, I guess, a good dialogue will happen due to Bell's relationship with Hestia. I can't really honestly, I just can't do ships. It's so hard. Alright, basically what I'm trying to say is, every time I try to do it, I just can't. I do it, I can picture it in my head fine. I've been thinking about it for the whole week, this is the what if itself, and I just can't bring myself to actually say it, which is weird, but I'm gonna try my best to get over that. So basically the next day we'll be going over, I guess, the whole Bell and the rest of the adventurers going down to the middle floors. And pretty much what would happen is Bell, still, I guess, knowing Eyes in a sense, he would then tell her if he can join as they go down to the middle floors. As everyone would have been kind of excited, Lily, Krozo, and Bell himself, as Hestia would then tell him to, I guess, be careful. As what would happen is, I guess Bell would, cup her cheek, her face cheek, as, he would tell her that, we'll just be fine, as they would head over to the dungeon. Now, once they would get there, they would meet up with people like Bets, Riveria, and Eyes, as they would get ready to head down the floors to the middle floors, like the 10th floor, the 15th floor, other floors like that, as they defeat the monsters. So what would happen is they'd be about the 10th floor when they would meet up with like Mikoto, and then they would kind of still get, like, Mikoto had like an injured Familia member, so they had to leave Bell and the rest of them with the other monsters. It would have been a lot, like really a lot, but since they had like the rest of the Loki Familia helping them out, they would have still basically barely escaped with their lives, which would still kind of, I guess, for a few, like, as you saw in the episode, they still were kind of mad at like the Take Familia for like leaving them like that, like basically dumping all those monsters on them, as they had to kill them. But obviously that would be resolved. So basically what would happen is Hermes and Hestia, not hearing from Bell for a long time, about maybe a few hours, they would be worried, as they would I guess form a quest team as they would head down there. Now what would happen is they would have been around the 13th floor, as they would be converged with about 50 to 100 monsters, as Bell was tasked with the difficult decision of having to either save Lily, who was, I guess, like tired, like really tired, or I guess save Crozo. Even though it's not really much of a decision, he basically still carries them like in canon, and they would head down to the 19th floor. Now, pretty much they still had that small few seconds when they pretty much barely evaded Goliath, as, pretty much he would dive through the tunnel entrance, or the exit, as, he would barely survive saving Lily and Crozo. So Eyes and the rest of the Loki Familia would, find Bell, as they kind of got separated due to all the monsters they had to fight. So pretty much they would head down to the 19th floor, where honestly they were just still on the same floor. They were in that civilization where no monsters spawn, so it was kind of just, they had time to recover. So basically Bell and Hestia and everyone else, like everyone on that quest to find Bell, would come down, and they would kind of chill for a few days before heading back up. But I'll be going over those few days. So basically Bell, Hestia, and Eyes, Tione, and the rest of the people who were just chilling with them, they'd be walking around, as Hestia would just look at this perfume, and it looked pretty great, as Bell would walk up, as he would hand her a sack of coins, or valis, as pretty much Hestia obviously kind of got the memo, saying Bell basically saying here, buy that perfume, as pretty much this would come in clutch later on. So obviously we all know, since we watched it, or I don't know if you watched it, but I watched it. So what would happen is that whole person who can pretty much fuse has like the item that Hades has, fusing and kind of becoming invisible, that whole fight would go there, but it's not going to happen yet. So pretty much Hermes would call him over, as they would go in that same forest, and we all know what's about to happen. So Bell would then be walking forward, as he would say, "So Hermes, do you happen to know that I'm that I'm Zeus's grandson? I think that's probably the reason why you came. You're quite a smart man, or god, Hermes. Honestly, you're the most unexpected person I've seen." As Aizen would be watching from Bell's mindscape, as he would look at Hermes, and he would for a few seconds, it would be like Urahara was overshadowed over Hermes, as he would get the vibe that Hermes is similar to that of Urahara, but not exiled. As Bell would be talking to Bell would be talking to Hermes, as Bell would say, "So, why did you come with? Did you want to see my power? I understand my power is great. It's stronger than all of the gods put together, even that of Ra." As Hermes would say, "That's quite a bold take. You're talking about the god of the sun, Ra? You're really sure you're stronger than him?" As Bell would say, "I'm absolutely sure. But don't worry, I'll hope to entertain you, Master Hermes." Since Bell still is respectful, so he calls gods or goddesses lady or master, as Hermes would say, "Follow me," as he would head over to that same tree branch where they're, where they're doing some dry out type stuff. As pretty much what would happen is Belle would still fall. No powers will help Belle from not falling in that water. So Belle would fall into the water, as obviously this water wouldn't just have been any normal water. It would have been where all of the one species of the Homo sapiens were taking baths. Obviously, we all know what I mean. And pretty much they'd be like, Tione would be like, "Oh, I didn't know Belle, I didn't know, you were that naughty." As pretty much, Belle would kind of, play it off, as he would say, "My fault. Me and Hermes were taking a quick look throughout the nature, as we found ourselves an interesting view." As this would distract them, as he would manage to escape. As he would come upon Ryu, the elf girl, by accident, and pretty much Ryu would actually believe the fact that Hermes was there as well, and Hermes' assistant, or Hermes' captain of the Familia, also knew as well, since that's just Hermes' habit. So pretty much they'd be walking around and around the mountains until pretty much, I think his name is Mord. He would challenge Belle, saying that, "Hey, if you win, then I get to do whatever you want, but if you win, you get to do whatever I want," and all. It's kind of the same thing like that. As they would start to fight. So what would happen is he would then, I guess, cause Belle's eyes to get not distorted, but he would cause slash glass. Okay, I'm gonna go this slowly. He pretty much stabs the glass below him, causing Belle to look down, protect his eyes, as he would use the hidden item to pretty much go invisible. As pretty much Hermes would be watching from afar, as Belle and pretend not to really know much and what's happening. So he pretend that he couldn't see and let Mord get a few hits on him. As when pretty much Mord is going for the finishing blow, out of nowhere, Belle would then move his arm as he would catch the attack. As Mord would be so surprised to be like, "How did you?" As Belle would say, "I sense your surroundings. I sense your life force in general. So I was just pretending to let you hit me, so I can know how you move and how your energy works, because you hitting me is just giving me research on how your energy fluctuates when you actually throw a punch." As then he would crush his hand, as he would say, "I guess I win." As he would flip Mord over, as he would slam him to the ground, before then using Bakudo number 63, Sajo Sabako, before sealing him, I guess temporarily bounding him, as he would win the spar. Now what would happen is he would tell Mord that, I want you to get up and have yourself a good day. As he would unbound Mord, and he would just walk off, and so he would start grunting, since that's just how level 5, I think he's a level 5, and that's just how level 5 hunters are. So pretty much a few minutes later, Hestia would come down, and she would be in her whole goddess form, or she would use her form, but then for a few seconds, and then she would realize that nothing's happening, so she would just go back into her usual form. As pretty much what happened is they would head back. They would we'll go over the time with the fight with Goliath, and pretty much what would happen is everyone would be ready, and they would head down, head over to Goliath where he was respawning. As they would be ready, as a huge form of Goliath would start to form. As Goliath, he's huge. As I don't know if you guys read the mythology, or not mythology, it's not mythology. Read the fight between David and Goliath, and how David killed Goliath. He was really huge, like a giant. So Goliath started to form. As pretty much what happened is, I guess the dungeon felt Hestia's presence, and they wanted her to use her aura so she can get sent back to the upper world, back to where all the gods and goddesses reside. But obviously Belle would be like, nah, fuck no. As pretty much the fight would start, Belle would unsheath his sword, as him and Eyes would kind of get ready to do slashes, but Eyes' attacks weren't really penetrating. They were just scratching his skin. As pretty much Belle would ask Aizen to help him to fixate his Ryatsu into one point. As Aizen would say, I'll help you this once. As what would happen is he would do the same fireball technique he did against Silverback, And what would happen is he would, raise his blade up in the air. As Hermes, he'd be like, oh my god, this is Belcronel's real power. The power of Kyoka Suigetsu. It's beautiful. I've never seen such power before. Zeus, you were right about You were right about Bel. You were right. He doesn't just have no potential. He has, oh my god. I said you were right? No, I was supposed to say you were wrong. Forgive me on that, though. But Hermes would go about how Bel has such great power in his mind, of course. He doesn't want people hearing that. As, you would be so excited as he wanted to see what Bel would do with that attack on Goliath. As what would happen is Bel would, slash his sword down as a huge arc of just firebolt would escape from his blade, as this would slice our boy Goliath in half. As for a few seconds, the goddess energy that Hestia gave him would start to radiate as he would go into his transcendent state for a few seconds before pretty much Goliath would be done for, as the attack would hit him and that would kill him. But without further ado, guys, that'll be the end of this what if, as pretty much Bel would pass out from using that attack and they would head up to the top floors. I hope you guys liked this part, but yeah, I'm not really still used to Denmachi what ifs, but I should be after this series. But without further ado, guys, peace. What would happen if Sosuke Aizen were to become our well-known protagonist with white hair and red eyes, his teacher in a sense, cared for him and took care of him in a sense and guided him to become stronger and more powerful than his usual counterpart? What would happen? But we'll be going over that in this part, as this is obviously going to be the third part of what if Bel wielded Kyoka Suigetsu. But without further ado, guys, roll that intro. We start this what if when, I guess, a little bit after Bel and the rest of the Loki Familia were to come out of the cave, or not the cave, the dungeon from the 18th floor. They had defeated, Goliath with the help of Bel, since the dungeon wanted Hestia to go into her god form so she can be sent back to the upper world. But pretty much the Hestia Familia, they would kind of rest for the rest of the night before the next day. Bel would be getting ready to go out and back into the dungeon, and I know for a fact some events that took place, like Lily and Krozo, they were a little bit later in the events of Danmachi, so yeah, that's on me. But I just wanted that to happen a little bit early, so most of the events that did take place, I guess, happened much in a more civilized style. But yeah, pretty much Bel would get up one morning as pretty much him, Krozo, and Lily agreed that they would meet up by the entrance of the dungeon, as he would tell Hestia that when he comes back from the dungeon, they should go on a interesting dinner, as pretty much Hestia had been sick a few days earlier, but for some reason Hestia was actually quite energetic to come, almost acting as if she was never sick in the first place, as she would agree before Bel would take his party. Now what would happen is Bel would then, I guess midway through, he would look in his pocket as he would, I guess, get this ring out. Obviously, we all know, I mean, if you know, I'm not going to say anything. You don't want to ruin it. But basically, he would then put it back as, obviously in these few weeks, he's been having Aizen teach him. He's learned how to manifest objects from his soul itself. And he's, I guess, outshamed or outshined all of the welders and all of Arario. And this is definitely going to come to help him in the long run. Obviously, like I said, if you know what I mean by the ring, then Yeah. So Bell would meet his supporter Lily and his, I guess, armor welder Krozo by the entrance of the dungeon. They would then proceed to go in, as this time they would want to go in a little more deeper into the dungeon, since I guess they felt more bold and they felt more confident to defeat more, I guess, monsters in the dungeon. So they would go into the dungeon before they would start slaying monsters, silverbacks, any creature like that, until we'll go to about again to the 18th floor. Pretty much the Loki Familia having pretty much departed from that area, the Goliath was still there and they would have to fight him again, which I'll be going over now. So they had less support, so I guess they had less confidence in actually beating him, but they still know they can beat Goliath, since Bell still had that training, like still trained after leaving the 18th floor, wanting to pretty much, I guess, keep up without the support from other people like the Loki Familia, Hermes, and Hestia. So he would unsheath his sword as he would start, I guess, clashing with the Goliath, as you know, he would defeat Goliath using his, I guess, infusing Ryatsu into his blade, causing like a huge explosion after he swung, and this would pretty much take off the top half of the Goliath's body, causing him to die as he would turn back into particles or dust, as they would continue down to about the 20th floor. Now once they would get there, they'd realize there was more tricks that the monster had up their sleeves, and they were semi-intelligent, learning how to actually fight. So they didn't just fight with blind instinct, they were pretty smart with their attacks and knew how to strategize. So, and also there was more of them, and more creatures that were as strong as Goliath. So what happened is Bell and like Krozo and Lily, they were pretty much like messed up, like they had cuts and bruises all over their body, as Bell would think like it was finally time to leave. As what would happen is it would go through a few incantations, going over the incantations for one of the best Kido, or one of the strongest Kido in the 90s, which is obviously Hado number 90, Kurohitsugi. So a huge black coffin would form around all of these, I guess, creatures, as it would close in, and pretty much, as you can see, once the box would disappear, the black coffin, the monsters would be seen getting cuts and bruises all over their bodies as they would disappear, as Bell would quickly, put all of their remainings into a bag, and also getting their magical stones so he can deposit them for a lot of money, since he defeated about maybe 50 creatures that had the same power level of that of Goliath, who was the floor boss of the 18th floor. So pretty much they would head back up with Bell using a Garganta, since he has learned ways of using teleportation techniques in case any situation like that ever occurs, which did happen, which did come in handy. So they would use their Garganta, and pretty much Bell would have to make a foothold for them so they can walk, as they would get to the other side, as they would appear by the, I guess, the exit, saying the entrance, I guess, of the dungeon, and they would walk out, be seen with like pretty scratches and bruises, but Bell didn't even have a scratch on him. As they would go over to the guild with pretty much Bell using the Hokyoku on, Krozo and Lily to, I guess, heal their wounds. As what would occur next is they would go over to the guild and pretty much deposit their magical stones, getting a lot, like I want to say a lot, I mean like a lot of Valis, probably about 250,000, since they did defeat a lot of creatures on the 20th floor. The highest I think adventurers have actually gotten was the 57th floor. So slowly but surely they will start to go down, and hopefully one day they'll be able to seal the black eye dragon. I think, yeah, the black dragons, as these were the same dragons that beat the Hera and Zeus Familia, or at least weakened them to a point of Zeus and Hera dying, being sent back to the upper world. So after their whole adventure goes about the same, pretty much Bell would, I guess, have that same dinner with Hestia, where Demeter and the rest of the goddess would do the same thing with Bell kind of, I guess, mothering them. But something they didn't realize was that was like Kyoka Suigetsu. Like, pretty much he put them under Kyoka Suigetsu, making it seem like that was actually him, while him and Hestia casually walked off. And they would make it to that same tower they were, looking at the moon. So what would occur next is something that completely changes the canonical timeline, which would obviously be that of Bell, I guess, expressing his love for Hestia in a sense. Obviously, that foreshadowing I had with the ring and all, that's basically just Bell proposing to Hestia. As I'm not really the type of guy to go in details, so you can picture it, I assume, as they would officially be engaged, I guess, which was kind of rare since no goddess or god has actually married a human, unless only some, but that was only in the mythological timeline, like Poseidon or Hades or any god like that. They seem to want to get with immortals, or at least have demigods, so they can, I guess, spread their power in a sense. But after that night, they would kind of spend the rest of the night, having fun. Not that type of fun, but fun, something people would do. Never mind. But basically, the next day, we'll be going over the dinner of the Apollo Familia. Well, something else would happen between that. So basically, Apollo, Lily, and Crozo, they were all chilling at a bar. This is where the whole, the whole little guy would come over there and just start. I don't even want to remember his name. I actually know his name, but I don't want to say it. Like, he's kind of annoying. But basically, he would come and start talking shit, saying that pretty much the only reason they actually survived in the 18th floor was because of the Loki Familia, being one of the strongest Familia. Obviously, if you, I guess, from an objective or just from a normal view, if you see someone who looks weaker being with one of the strongest Familia ever, then you would see that he's pretty much, I guess, how would I describe this? Probably getting carried in a sense. If I have any gamers watching, you know what I mean. But he, like, the little, I don't know, whoever was just talking shit, basically saw that as he would just, I guess, point it out. As obviously then, Bell would be calm before, he would start talking shit about Hestia, saying some pretty sexualized wrong things. As he would get up before he would then pretty much, go to, unsheath the sword. But let's just say the boy Crozo comes in and he just, throws a swing at him. Obviously, the reason why is because, obviously, Crozo would know if actually Bell does anything, he's gonna kill this guy. So, obviously, he's gonna distract Bell by, punching the kid. And pretty much what would happen is, I can't remember his name, but he was the captain of the Apollo Familia. He would get up and they would start to have a brawl, but this time he won't go to strangle. He won't actually defeat Bell by holding him in a strangling position. When pretty much he would go to have a fight with Bell, start clashing, Bell would easily keep up and be almost faster than him. As what would happen is he would then use Bakuro number 61, Rikujo Kuro, as 6 bars of light would, I guess, impale itself into the captain of the Apollo Familia, as he would be restrained, and pretty much, let's just say, they kind of destroyed them. Now, pretty much Bell would head home, and he would be all, I guess, tattered with bruises from the fight. He was literally fighting one of the strongest members of the Apollo Familia. He is the captain, so he's obviously going to be pretty bruised up. Even though he's not Aizen's reincarnation, but he's he still has Kyoka Suigetsu. Doesn't mean he's actually perfected to, I guess, have some bruises or wounds from a battle. So don't think I'm pulling Xehther's here, okay? I'm not gonna have Bell one shot everyone. It doesn't make sense. I want to actually have a proper story. So Bell would head back home. Obviously, he would get quite a talking from Hestia for, I guess, even trying to fight with the Apollo Familia. So what happened is they would head over to Loki. Just this time, Hestia and Loki, they won't actually start bantering, as Loki would be severely serious, saying that if whatever you did to Apollo, he'll probably start a war game with you. So I'd be pretty on guard in a sense, as what would happen is they would leave, knowing that they'll probably be challenged to a war game, and Hestia basically telling Belle what a war game is, as it's basically a war between one familia and another, but the gods and goddesses can't interfere, and whoever wins basically owns, or I guess gains, all the members of that familia in their own familia. Obviously, we all know Apollo wanted Belle in the group because of his massive growth in, I guess, being an adventurer, and obviously his magical ability, which he gained after being saved by Eyes. His infatuation with her basically gave him a magical ability, which he still retains. Think about it. If you wanted to become as strong or stronger than a god or goddess, then that ability will be strengthened, not weakened or taken away. As we'll go back to the what if. So the next day, an invite would appear at the door, and this would be the invite to the dance, to the Apollo Familia, I guess a party in a sense, as they would, go shopping for, I guess, nice looking clothes. I guess Belle would get like a suit, anything you would usually wear to something, a gathering that it was more fancy in a sense, and not anything you would usually wear, I mean. So pretty much they would, spend the day shopping for anything they would wear, and pretty much that night, Belle would have gotten ready. As Belle, Lily, Crozo, and Hestia were to leave, they would head over to the gathering, and once they would get there, they would, show the invite before being let in. Now, once they would get in, there would be this huge mansion they would see, as Belle would be like, wow, that's bigger than our familia, and possibly bigger than the Loki familia house. As, Hestia would smack his arm saying, that doesn't matter. You know how they say, quality over quantity. Even though that actually never happened, I just want to add in, some dialogue that actually never happened. But basically, they would go in, and all the gods and goddesses would appear, with pretty much Belle, shaking hands with Hermes, as him and Hermes have pretty much, gained an associate type friendship in a sense, as they both are very smart. So I guess smart people would want to be friends in a sense. You don't want to be smart with stupid people. That's kind of idiotic, unless you want to teach them, but I would never want to do that. But pretty much Freya would then appear, as Hestia would be like, don't look, as pretty much Belle would be like, okay, calm down, all right, Freya's charm doesn't work on me, okay, so just calm down. As pretty much Freya would walk over to Belle trying to use her charm, which she uses on every person for some reason, but sometimes it doesn't work, or sometimes she just chooses not to. But she would try to use her charm, but obviously remembering the meeting between Aizen and Freya, she would choose not to. Like, she was going to, but then stopped, realizing, remembering, I guess looking at Belle's sword, which he still had on him, or I guess feeling the presence of it. It reminded her of the conversation she had with Aizen, and how Aizen output his killing intent onto her, and it was pretty scary. Obviously, if it was the mythological forms, then Aizen would be scared shitless, not the other way around. But basically, she would then say her greetings, saying, hey Hestia, and hey Mr. Crenell, and other things like that, as she would then walk away, as pretty much Loki and Hestia, they would continue their banter. I don't really want to get into it, it's more like I guess a banter that girls have in a sense, since, guys don't have tits, so, never mind. But basically, Belle and Hermes would be talking, as you would, Hermes just start getting onto that topic of being with certain Homo sapiens. I'm just kidding. But basically, Belle would say, flash his hand, like his right hand, obviously showing his finger, as Hermes would be like, oh, interesting. How come you never told this to anyone? As Belle would say, I don't think people like the fact that a human is marrying a goddess. It wouldn't really make sense. As Hermes would start patting his shoulder, saying, I understand, Mr. Crenell. As obviously the whole dance between, I guess, Ayaz and Belle wouldn't have been on that of a romantic level, but just dancing, people dance without having any romantic value whatsoever. But obviously other people saw it otherwise. But pretty much a spotlight would be formed on, on their heads, I guess you can say, just like around them, as like the whole, I guess the other lights would kind of be dimmed, as it's kind of like a spotlight moment, as Apollo would walk up to, Bell, as, Hestia would, come over, as, all the other gods and goddesses are waiting, because every time this happened, that means a war game was announced. So what would happen is, Apollo would walk up to Bell, kind of doing the same thing, as he would show the injured member of his familia, the one that they beat up at the bar the other day, as Apollo would demand that Hestia were to punish Bell for that, as Bell would say, I don't think so. Honestly, it was that boy over there, the innocent looking one. He's the one who instigated it. As what would happen is he would, I guess, use a technique, I guess, reminiscing all the memories of what he saw, since he does have control over senses, so he could probably replay what happened, I guess, in the eyes of other people, so they can see what really happened. As Apollo would still, see what happened and still announce the war game, as pretty much Hestia would decline. There was no reason to actually accept the war game offer, since they did nothing wrong, and this was simply a political move, or a military move in a sense, on the Hestia Familia, and they weren't going to cater to Apollo or his antics. As what would happen is they would leave, and this would have not really been good, as what would happen is the whole attack on the Hestia Familia would happen. They would wake up that morning, as what would happen, there would be explosions at the front of the church, as what would happen is Bell would immediately get up, getting into his suit and getting his sword on, as he would manifest it into his hands before he would go outside, and there'd be, I guess, dozens of Apollo Familia members using explosives on the front of their church, as they were doing a full-on scale attack. As what would happen is Hestia would say, we have to get to the guild because they can't actually go for us there. As, Bell would, nod his head, as they would start running through the alleys of Aurario, when suddenly the same captain from earlier, I really need to find out his name, but he would start to appear, at the roof of one of the buildings, as he would get ready to fight Bell. Suddenly, I guess a sniper, not actual sniper, but a bowswoman, I don't really know how to pronounce it, but someone from a tower would start aiming bows, like a bow and arrow at him, as he would be distracted, as Apollo and like the Apollo Familia would be distracted from Bell and Hestia. So Bell and Hestia would run around a corner, as they would kind of have a small moment before, Hestia would say, we can leave Aurario, we can take the Familia members and come back stronger and take over the Apollo Familia. Like, we don't have to fight them, pretty much. As Bell would be like, it sounds tempting, obviously, as he would say, well, how about, I'm gonna have to disagree. He would start stuttering, and he didn't know what to do, so he would disagree, saying that the Apollo Familia are quite weak, and me and Isaac could definitely deal with him. I deal with Apollo himself, that's what I meant by him. As they would jump around the corner, as Apollo would, his resolve would harden at that sounded sus, but his resolve would become stronger, as he would unsheath his sword before going to slice down at the captain of the Apollo Familia, and a huge slash would appear over his chest, diagonal, and pretty much he would then fall over, as he was severely injured, but pretty much Bell didn't really put that much strength in the attack, so he wasn't really worried. Obviously, Bell will know about, I guess, Lily's relationship with the Soma Familia, and how she's pretty much being controlled, so when Lily dips, like, he doesn't really care, because he knows what's happening and all. As Bell would head towards the Apollo Familia, and him and Hestia would guide him, as they would get to the gates of the Apollo Familia. So once they would get there, the gates would open, as pretty much what would happen is Bell would unsheath his sword, as he would flash step to the starting of the steps, as once he would appear there, all the guards, they would fall over, as they would have chest on their backs, their necks, their chest, as they would be killed. Bell would kill all of them. Now, if you're wondering, wait, well, pause. He can't just do that, right? Well, the Apollo Familia attacks, so that gives enough reason to basically for Bell to be hostile towards them. And anyway, let's just say, it's not, obviously he didn't actually kill them, but I'll be going over that in a few seconds. So Bell and Apollo would be staring down at each other, and he says, "Why should I ever accept a war game from you?" As Bell would disappear, as he would then touch the chest of Apollo, saying, I guess finishing his sentence saying, "When I can kill you in just 1 second." As then pretty much Apollo would then widen his eyes as he would start, sweating, realizing the killing intent from Bell, as, he realized he kind of messed up. Whatever he did to anger Bell, this was not good. As Bell would then flash up away, as he would say, "Well, we accept your war game." As he would say, by the way, you've been under my Kyoka Suigetsu the whole time." As, he would then see all the guards that were still there, and they were still in that same standing position as they were, as, he would, I guess, become massively confused. How is he, a god, falling under such a mortal's hypnosis? But he's really excited. If he wins this, he gets the power of Bell Cornell, but he's fearing Bell. His chess pieces are falling, and the player itself, he's the player of the chess game, he's not really, I guess, he has no effect on Bell. And Bell is, I guess, just a much better chess player in this situation. So no matter what a chess player does, he cannot beat someone who is smarter and has more pieces than the other. Not about the pieces though, Bell does not have more pieces, but he has more friends who have more pieces than Apollo. So yeah, I kind of just went on a small tangent there, but pretty much how the war games will go exactly the same. So what would happen is Bell, he would pretty much, I guess, save Lily the same way. As what would happen is he would be looking towards, Soma, as he would say, "Look, I know what your goal is of making the perfect alcohol. So I'll make you an agreement, Soma. I agree that if I drink your alcohol and if I actually withstand the effects, that you will let Lily, let her go from your familia and stop this madness, as you seem to have no control over your familia members, even though you did found the familia." As Soma would then would keep doing his thing until a few seconds later, he would look over as he would pour his alcohol into a cup before handing it to Bell. Bell having no problem, he would just drink the alcohol. As a few seconds, he acted just fine, and honestly, Bell's not a drinker, so he hasn't really drank alcohol, even though he is 19. He can drink alcohol if he wants to. But a few seconds later, he would start feeling dizzy as he would fall over onto his knee, as, he would put Ryatsu or mana into his body, trying to, I guess, stand up. As he would stand up, as the Hokyoku would kick in, as it would, I guess, erase the effects of the alcohol, as he would stand strong yet again, completely resisting the effects and, I guess, erasing the effects of the alcohol, as pretty much Soma would be shocked, as he's spent years upon years working on this alcohol. So he pretty much immediately gets up and tells everyone to stop fighting, as pretty much Lily was released of her Felna, and she would have been given a Felna by Hestia herself, as Lily would have joined the Familia in that short time before they would head over to the war games, start the war games. So what happened is Lily would use her transmutation ability, I think it's called transmutation, her the ability to change into another person. I can't believe I forgot the name of it, but she changed into one of the Familia members and pretty much say, wait up for me, as the gate would barely close and she would be in. As Bell and other Familia members like Mikoto, they would leave the Take family to join the Hestia Familia, trying to help them, since Mikoto and the rest of the Take Familia, they liked his drive and they wanted to join. So Mikoto would be outside onto a tree, as she would be seen, and they would all obviously think there's only like 3 people, and that's exactly true. But you know how they say quality over quantity, so it's gonna be Bell, Mikoto, and Krozo. They'll be just fine. So Mikoto, with the help of Krozo, would start using magical based attacks, completely doing a lot of damage to the wall of the base. Obviously, by the way, it's the same mode for the war games, castle defense. So pretty much now Bell, Mikoto, and Krozo are now attacking the base while Lily's already in. So what would happen is it would rush in after Mikoto and Krozo used all their magical based abilities onto the castle, they would have been weakened, as all the members would be focused on defeating Mikoto and Krozo, while Lily would open the gates and Belle would run in. Now what would happen, obviously, if I didn't mention this, I know Firebolt is gained because Sarah gave Belle a spell book of it and he just learned it. So I know it's kind of like contradictory, but pretty much what would happen is he would use Firebolt from below, but it's not like it's not like the usual power due to the Hogyoku and obviously Belle's massive growth. This Firebolt would be no Firebolt, as he would hit it from below the captain of the Familia, the Apollo Familia, as this would win them the games. Like he would win the war games, as Apollo would then be seen, I guess I'm being quite angry due to the effects of the war game. So what would happen is Hestia would demand that Apollo were to disband his Familia and give everything to the Hestia Familia, and he were to be exiled from all of Aurora. Everyone would start, cheering due to the apparent winning, like unexpected winning of the Hestia Familia, but other than that, they were still quite happy. But without further ado, guys, that'll be the end of part 3 of What If Belle Wielded Kyoka Suigetsu. Now, pretty much the next part, I'll be going over the whole Xehther and them like having, I guess, getting their new Familia base, and the church will kind of become like their last option in a sense. So we'll be going over the Amazon, I guess the red light districts in general, and helping them find Harahime and defeating Xehther and their short alliance with Freya. But without further ado, guys, this is where I'll be leaving off part 3 of What If Belle was Wielded Kyoka Suigetsu. I was about to say was, but without, rule that intro. Aizen Sosuke. Sosuke Aizen was a Shinigami in the land or the world of Bleach. What would happen if the history of Bleach were to be continued and everyone in the world of Damachi were to see it as some folklore or some past history? Well, before we go into this what if, I'll be explaining Aizen's abilities. Aizen has this ability called Kaizen Senin, I think it's called, or basically he has his sword, he does Kudakare Kyoka Suigetsu, and then puts his opponent in complete hypnosis. He can make them see a dragon with just a fly, reality, basically warping their sense of reality itself. He has also had other abilities, or used inventions to basically continuously get stronger, this being the Hogyoku. His first Zanbakuto had rejected him, so he had replaced his Zanbakuto with the Hogyoku, fusing with it and being able to use Kyoka Suigetsu without the need of going through the incantations Kudakare Kyoka Suigetsu or Shatter Kyoka Suigetsu. So yeah, what would happen if the same Shinigami Aizen Sosuke were to teach a certain adventurer from the show Danmachi? His name would be Belcornell. But without further ado, guys, roll that intro. So we, resume this what if after the whole events of the war games. The Hestia Familia would have gained massive traction due to the fact that they beat the Apollo Familia, which has been trying to impose its territory onto other familias, and due to that, more people would be inclined to try to join. So we'll go a little bit before that. Now, Belle would be walking around in their new mansion, in a sense. They had moved to Apollo's recent mansion, which had been filled with statues of himself. He was quite the narcissist, and he loved himself in that way. So it took a while to take that all out and renovate the place. So Belle would be walking around, and she would see 2 people by the gate. This would be Cassandra and her friend. I kind of forgot her name though, but forgive me. So what would happen is, Belle would walk up to them, I guess on the other side, as what would happen is Cassandra would kind of be, how do I say this, worried, since her favorite pillow, she was in the Apollo Familia, and her favorite pillow was missing. So pretty much what would happen is Belle would offer his help. He would say, "Where did you see it last?" As she would tell him where the room was, and once he would find that pillow, he would then give it to her, and telling her that he actually believed in her ability to see into the fifth dimension, or her fifth dimension ability to basically see, I guess, foreshadow the events of the future in a dream. Obviously, curse of the, telling her the curse of the power was nobody would believe her. But obviously, he would tell her that I transcend above these magic abilities, so the curse doesn't affect me. Or any god or goddesses would also be above that. As he would walk away telling them, good day. As later on, Hestia would announce a meeting where everyone could join if they wanted to. So what happened is a bunch of level 1, or I guess not level 1 since they didn't actually become join Familia, but we're talking people who have the potential to be level 1 and 2s or possibly 3s. They would all line up to join the Hestia Familia, and pretty much the Hestia Familia will open them with open arms. And if you're wondering what's didn't they have a 200 million Valis debt? Well, not exactly, since Bell didn't actually get that same weapon from the Hephaestus Familia, voiding most of the debt he had. Sure, there was a few million, but with Bell's, I guess, fast ways of gaining money, this debt turned into a profit, possibly an investment. But so about maybe 200 level 1 to level 3 potential, I guess you could say, adventurers would join the Familia, and there was enough space to occupy them. So pretty much they realized that due to this influx of members, they would need someone who would, I guess, keep the place clean in a sense. And yeah, this is kind of what Haruhime would do after she saved and all. But pretty much what would happen is it would be around evening, and Bell would realize he had a meeting with Hermes at the pub or the bar. So he would go over there, as he would see Hermes sitting down, talking freely like he usually does, as he would walk up to the chair, sitting down next to him, ordering just, I guess, nothing too alcoholic based, just whatever drink you guys like. Just imagine that, why not? So what would happen is he would sit next to him, as Hermes would be like, "Oh, Mr. Cornell," as Bell would be like, "Just Bell," as Hermes would say, all right, Bell. So I assume they would start to get into the small talk before they would get into the real issue. Hermes would say, "So you felt it too, right? And you saw it." As Bell would get on a serious look, as he would say, "The Ishtar Familia, right? I heard they're going after the Death Stone, or the Killing Stone. They have a certain member named Haruhime, and they're gonna sacrifice her in order for them to all get level boost. But I didn't know much about this, only from, I guess, brokers I bought from." As Hermes would say, "You're quite right. I was gonna go meet Ishtar in a few days to talk about this, but I wanted to, meet with you first to make sure." As Bell would be like, "Okay," as he would ask Hermes if he can possibly become an information broker. The brokers he hired, they weren't as good as Hermes. Hermes is specialized in gaining information, and it was obviously natural to ask the person who's the best at sending messages and gaining information to, I guess, take him on as an apprentice. So Bell would be accepted by Hermes, as he would kind of give him the scoop on all the where he gets his information, and this would include getting contact with Freya. Now this would actually come in clutch later on in the story or in the arc, because let's just say something's gonna happen. So nothing too bad, okay, so don't worry about that. After pretty much Bell's meeting with Hermes, he would head back to the Familia, and once he would get back, he would rest for the night in the same room, and not the same room, it would have been in the room, never mind, it's not actually needed, just any room, okay? So the next day he would get up, as he would, put on his outfit before just training for the day and doing quests for other people, gaining more information on, I guess, the state of Orario itself. It's kind of Bell's new ideal in a sense, wanting to gain more information so he can go to a fight knowing his opponent's weaknesses. But in the evening, what would happen is he would see Mikoto and her ally going over to the entertainment district, Obviously, we know what this place is. It's like, oh my god, jeez, man. Never mind. We all know what this place is. So what would happen is he knows Hermes was gonna have a meeting with Ishtar, so he went there to make sure, he went with him to make sure, Hermes didn't get the same treatment he got in canon. Bro, Broski was crying after, not actually crying, but it was comical. Like, this guy, Ishtar is crazy, okay? I'm actually serious. I'm just kidding. But basically, he'd be walking with Hermes, as pretty much Hermes would offer him the same aphrodisiac, with Belle saying that he has no reason to use this aphrodisiac in the first place. Not that he was interested in having intercourse, nor even using an aphrodisiac, as he would hand it back to him, telling him you should probably give it to someone who actually needs it, or just sell it. As they would head over to the Ishtar Familia house, as once they would get there, all the Familia members would start looking at them with, I guess, a hungry gaze, since they were pretty much raised to be like that. They were raised to have business, if you get my vibe. Okay, they were just prostitutes, okay, that's all you need to know. But pretty much they would head up the stairs all the way to Ishtar's room, and once they would get there, they would get in, as Belle would try his best to not focus on Ishtar, to not get put on her charm. I mean, he still has the same charm, like the skill, but he didn't know that the skill actually makes it so you can't get put on her charms. So pretty much they would be there as Ishtar tried to interrogate Hermes, but Belle would just output his reishi or his ryatsu, telling Ishtar to back off her Freya's territory, because if they do, they will get penalized by the guild. Obviously, if you don't remember, Ishtar actually sued the guild, taking their money. So obviously, they weren't really under the power of the guild. But if they did anything to the Freya Familia, the guild will respond with twice the force. Obviously, since Freya has level 7 adventurers like Otter or Alan, it would have been a losing battle for her, as the strongest of her members was only level 4. This was Freyna. And Freyna had a weird personality, making it incompatible to fight with other people, and with the help of Haruhime, that would still make it like a downside against everyone else. But pretty much Belle would tell Ishtar that she's going down soon, and he doesn't care about the consequences he receives. He doesn't want Ishtar ruling anymore in the lower world. So pretty much they would then leaving, I guess, kind of starting unresolved conflict. Just starting conflict between the Orario part of the city and the Red Light District. So they would leave, as they would bump into Mikoto, as pretty much what would happen is Mikoto would explain that she was looking for one of her friends. Not her friends. I mean, it makes it sound like I'm saying more than one person. It was just Haruhime. And pretty much what would happen is Belle would say, yeah, I know her. Okay, so how about we get out of here, I'm not trying to get seduced, okay? Not that it actually is possible. It's physically impossible due to Belle's charm. Not like the ability to constantly evolve. Never mind. It's basically resistant to charms. That's what I'm trying to say. So they would head back to the Hestia Familia, with Belle seeing off Hermes, as they would head inside for the night. So for the next few days, him and Hermes would be coordinating, as he would say, if you did go for the unfinished, like a quest in the favor of Haruhime in a sense, since she's a non-combatant, then you'll be able to buy her in a sense, and pretty much liberate her from the Ishtar Familia. So they'd be down in the dungeon, and obviously we'd see the Ishtar Familia, and Ishtar made an order to capture Belle Cornell. And since Belle Cornell was after her personal interest, so it'd be in her personal gain, or her best gain, to basically get rid of him. So what would happen is, they would have Haruhime use a level boost on Aisha and Freyna. So Freyna would be at a level 5, while Aisha would be at a high level 4, and all the others would be boosted to a level 2. So there'd be about 15 level 2s due to the boost. I'm saying after boost. And Aisha and Freyna, who were level 5, and Aisha was level 4. So they were pretty stacked. And let's just say Bell, Makoto, and all the rest of his friends, they would kind of be a little backed up in the corner. But they would win this, and I'll be going over that soon here. So what happened is, on the other side of the wall, it would be busted open, like with Freyna using her strength, and Freyna would go to basically, throw a punch at Bell, as Bell would use a Bakudo number 81 Danku with no incantation whatsoever, as a huge shield of light would appear between Freyna's fist and himself, as this would block it, as the shield did receive a small crack, but it was nothing too much. As what would happen is, pretty much Bell would kind of use Hado number 54, as what would happen is the Danku would open a little space just enough for the fire spell to go through, as this would hit the rest of the weaker adventurers, but Freyna and Aisha would be seen with just burn marks. Now after this, Bell would unsheath his sword as he would go to slice them down, as pretty much what would happen is Welf and the rest of his guild members would tell him not, the familiar members, as they would tell him not to, saying that if they killed them, then there would be investigation by the guild and they could get penalized for killing each other, since it is technically against the rules to kill each other. As Bell would then realize the anger that took over him, since not anger but just the will to live, in a sense. Not that Bell is scared or anything, it's just when you're being attacked, you lose most of your logic due to the adrenaline pumping through your veins. So Bell would sheath his sword as he would walk away, as they would pass out. So yeah, they would head back, as they would report back to Ishtar of their failures. They didn't kidnap Bell, that was their main target, or the other Familia members of the Hestia Familia. So Ishtar would be massively irritated by this fact, and she still realized they have Haruhime, and just in a few days when the full moon comes out, they can finally perfect or perform the Killing Stone ritual. So what would happen is, after the whole incident in the dungeon, Bell would go see a certain someone. This would be none other than Freya. Now, he would go in, as most of the Familia members would welcome Bell in, due to Freya and Aizen's meeting, I guess you can say. Obviously Aizen telling Freya to, back the fuck up, okay? You just don't. So pretty much Bell would go up to the Tower of Babel, as once he would get there, you would meet none other than Freya herself, as Otter would leave, since I guess that's kind of the point. As what would happen is, Bell would say, I have a proposition, as Freya would be sitting on her throne, as she'd be kind of interested. As Bell would start to go over the plans of Ishtar with the Killing Stone ritual, as he would say, maybe we could possibly do a temporary alliance and destroy Ishtar's Familia, and I'd give the land to you. As pretty much Freya would, take a few minutes to think about it before accepting. She's getting pretty much a whole district to herself, and the possibility of getting more land in Auraria was very pleasing to her. So she would accept the deal, as Bell would start to go over everything he gained on Ishtar and when it's happening. As pretty much what would happen is, he would say that he'll even take responsibility if the guild were to penalize her, and pretty much what he's saying is, if they were to be discovered, Bell would be the one. Bell would admit himself that he was the conspirator in the situation of the ending of the Ishtar Familia and the regime change in that district. So after his meeting with Freya, he would head out the Tower of Babel before heading to the Hestia Familia, getting ready with all his men and women and the Familia to basically get ready for a quick and decisive attack. So what would happen is, he would go for Haruhime first. She had the level boost, and if he so does, he could use her to basically use the level boost on all of his familia, including himself, even though he doesn't really need one, but just in case. So it would be the night of the full moon, as he would have all of his familia and the Freya familia waiting at the borders of the red light district, ready to burn the whole city to the ground. Similar to that, and no, I'm just kidding, I'm not even going to make any comparisons. But basically, Belle would then flash step throughout the city, going to the same house of the business place, let's just say that, the studying place, as Xehther would say. Obviously, we know what this place is, okay? It's the red light district. This whole place is filled with Amazonas. So, yeah. So, obviously, Haruhime thinking that Belle was a client, obviously, it wouldn't go the same way, but Belle would be like, yo, chill, okay? I would calm down. I'm not a client. I'm actually here from your friend Mikoto, as I'm here to, I guess, rescue you in a sense from the Killing Stone ritual. As he would say that they're gonna destroy the Ishtar Familia, and if she so desires, she could possibly join the Hestia Familia after this. So what happens, she would agree, and as him and the Ranart, since she has fox-like features, like with the tail and the ears, so they would call her a Ranart, they would head towards the middle of, I guess, the red light district, where the Ishtar Familia resided. Now, once they would get there, he would then, I guess, perform a technique, I guess, sending a fireball in the air, kind of like a flare, to give the signal to invade. So Belle would just start walking through the streets, as there'd be, as the background, he would hear explosions, as he would hear fire, like the whole district going in flames, as he would flash step towards the entrance of the Familia, like the doors. He would then go through, as he would unsheath his blade, as he would go through the whole building, just slicing any Ishtar Familia member that would try to get in his way. Even Ishtar's closest member, I can't remember his name though. He has immense speed. He was remarked for his immense speed, and pretty much when Ishtar tried to use her charm on Belle in canon, he was the one holding him down. I think his name is Tamun, but I'm not sure though. I may be wrong. But basically, he would go up, slicing down any Familia member that got in his way, as he would make it up to the top floor where Ishtar resides, as he would meet Freya on the way there, as they would walk up there. I guess not in that way, but they would go up there as they would confront Ishtar, as she'd be running away. She has really no power in her, I guess, in her state in the lower world. If it was the upper world, she might have a chance, but Freya would just go in her release state, or her divine state, and Aizen, or Belle, obviously being stronger than all the gods and goddesses put together, even that of Uranus wouldn't be able to stop him. So he didn't confront Ishtar, as he would say, I did tell you this would be the end of your reign. You really took my threat lightly. That's the problem. You didn't take it seriously, that's what I mean. So, pretty much he would walk up to her, as he would unsheath his blade, as he would slice her down. As Freya would then, tell her last words, as she did in canon, as Ishtar would be sent to the upper world. She didn't have time to go into her divine state, nor could she. If she went in her divine state, then Freya would just go in her divine state. And like I said, Belle is stronger than all the gods and goddesses put together, at least if he gained that form that Aizen does in the Bleach Souls. There was a new gif of it, but it's like an angelic form in a sense. But basically, Ishtar, there'd be huge glowing light, as Ishtar would be sent back to the upper world, where all the gods, or all the remaining gods and goddesses reside. That accent. But never mind. But basically, Belle would then shake hands with Freya, just kind of continuing their alliance. So once they would, get out the Ishtar Familia, they would go back to the Aurario area district, I guess you can say, and they would be cornered by multiple gods, I guess, that were mostly focused on the rules, I guess, and they would be cornered by guild members. So what would happen is they would be penalized for the destruction of the Ishtar Familia, and Belle would be yelled at by Uranus. Like, he'd be enraged. The fact that they pretty much took down the Ishtar Familia with no reason whatsoever. As Bell would say, I don't really care what you say, Uranus. You're even if you might be the gods of all gods together, I am still stronger than you. It's kind of fitting, isn't it? Ironic how someone you see as a mortal will become stronger than you. But obviously Uranus being kind of slightly scared of Bell due to him wielding Kyoka Suigetsu, a blade that not even Ra could compare to, or even the Ryu. Or actually, that's just a debate there, but pretty much Bell would still be penalized. Obviously, he wouldn't do anything about it. He has no reason to. It's not like it was that bad of a penalization. Nothing like you can't take quest anymore. They could still do quest and knowledge. They were pretty much I guess their reputation lowered. They just attacked the Familia for no reason, and I guess that wasn't really professional. But without further ado, guys, that will mark the end of, I guess, the Ishtar reign. In the next part, we'll be going over the finale, pretty much, of how Bell and the rest of his Familia pretty much beat the Black Dragons, as something will have an odd ending, okay? Without further ado, guys, I hope you guys had a good day, but roll that outro. Sosuke Aizen, the legendary Shinigami who pretty much fooled all of the Dote 13, started his own utopia and was and planned everything about the protagonist of Bleach, Ichigo Kurosaki, and ultimately planned his own demise, or his ultimate failing of his sealing, and pretty much came back and was shown to be able to break out whenever he wishes. But this said Shinigami had the powers to put someone in ultimate hypnosis without even going through the incantations Kudakare Kyoka Suigetsu. What would happen if the same individual were to train a protagonist from the anime Danmachi, and this character would be Bell Cornell? What would change in the events of Danmachi, and how would Bell's characters change overall? We'll be going over that in this What If, as this is part 5 and this will be the finale. Should be around 30 minutes this part, and the movie special, if we add them all together, 5 parts, 30 minutes each, that should be around 2 hours and 30 minutes, about 2 hours and 35 minutes possibly, it just depends. But without further ado, guys, roll that intro. Alright, so we resumed this What If, as Bell would have been sleeping in his bed with his partner next to him, I guess, as he would have been interrupted by a thought in his head. Now, this would not be just a regular thought, it would be Aizen trying to talk to Bell. Aizen would tell Bell that it was time, and obviously the viewers don't know what Aizen means, but Bell knows. In his time being trained by Aizen, he had been told that once he gets strong enough, he'll be trained by Aizen directly, like sparring. He never truly sparred Aizen before, only was given advice on how to use his Kido or his Kyoka Suigetsu properly, but he had never fought Aizen before, and he was kind of scared. Aizen was pretty strong, and he didn't know what he could do against Aizen. He pretty much got everything from Aizen, and it would be kind of weird to use his own tactics against him, since he must have some contingency plan against that. But without further ado, we'll get into the fight, or at least when he goes into the mindscape. So he'll tap his sword as he'll go into the mindscape, as once he'll get there, it'll been, like I said, it would have been that mountain, the landscape with the garden of flowers and butterflies. Obviously, it's very symbolic if you get the forms of, symbolism from the butterflies, and the forms that Aizen goes through, like the chrysalis, and then the cracking, and then the butterfly form. But pretty much what would happen is Bell would go into his mindscape, as he would see Aizen standing on the edge of the precipice, as he would tell Bell to come over here. Bell would walk up to the mountain, for some reason feeling the need to stay back, but he still went forward. As Aizen says, "Did you notice it, by the way?" As Bell would say, "Notice what?" As Aizen would say, "There's something special with this specific mountain. Usually anyone who comes into this mindscape and tries to walk over the mountain will feel the fear of, devolving in a sense, or just descending, growing weaker, and they become fearful because they see the edge of the precipice. But you felt that fear, but you didn't stop. Why is that?" As Bell would start to think, "Oh, why did I stop? I don't know, I just wanted to keep going forward, I just wanted to do it for that reason." As Aizen would say, "Oh, so you did it just because you felt the need to, because you could do it?" As Bell would say, "Yeah, pretty much." As Aizen would say, all right. You know how I told you when I first met you, I told you that once you get to your limit, I could shatter your limits and make you become stronger, exponentially stronger." As Bell would say, "Yeah, I remember that. Is it that time?" As Aizen would say, "Yeah, I'm gonna train you myself, and this time you're gonna be fighting me constantly. As you fighting me will have you go above your limits and reach new heights." As Bell would kind of gain a smile before he would unsheath his sword or manifest it. As him and Aizen would start fighting, they would spar with Aizen giving him the intent to kill, basically imposing his Ryatsu on him, giving him the feeling that Aizen's gonna kill him. Obviously he wasn't going to, but this put Bell on his tiptoes. Just put him on his toes. What am I saying? So every time, the first few minutes he was good, he was clashing until his Ryatsu started to deplenish, I think that's the word. Deplete, that's probably better. As pretty much he would start to go any swing he did, that was on energy that he just randomly formed. Now this would be Bell on his last legs, as he would try to fight. This would cause him to slowly but surely crack his limits, as he would gain more and more Ryatsu from doing that. And Aizen can see that this is what's happening. So he would continue to clash with Bell, as Bell was really holding his own. As pretty much what would happen is Bell would go to swing, as he would purposely demanifest his sword, as he would, Aizen would kind of be left on guard with his sword in the middle of a swing, as Bell would then remanifest it and then go to swing at Aizen, as a huge spell would appear near Aizen's neck, as this would be the same defensive spell that he used to defend himself against Ichigo in the fake Harakura town. As Aizen would say, good, you learned my lesson. A creature's weakest point is near their head, and once you cut that off, they're killed. Nothing you can do about that. As Bell, as he would congratulate Bell, saying, "Look at yourself." As what would happen is Bell would look down, as he would see this orb in his chest, as it was spouting out white substances. That sounded sus. But it was like a white shell going over his chest that would start to spread out through his body before it would go up to near his neck. As Aizen would say, "I see the chrysalis shell is forming around your body. Once you get to the end of the stage, you should be into the butterfly." As pretty much Bell would get the idea why there's so many butterflies here. As he would continue to fight with Aizen, even them going into, Shikai, trying to hypnotize them. And every time they're about to slice each other, they'd realize they were in the other's hypnosis. Or they'd, clash with Kido with one, clashing with Raika Hose, or trying low-level Kidos with exponential Ryatsu, making it the power of a level like a Kido in the 90s. And pretty much what would happen is Bell would remember one of the Kidos Aizen taught him. He would say, "Hado no Kyuju, Goryo Tenmetsu." As 5 purple dragons would form behind him, as the landscape would start to shake from the attack, as he would then charge forward with the 5 dragons coming behind him. As Aizen would do the same, as the dragons would clash with the other, and Aizen would clash swords with Bell, as there'd be a huge shockwave, as a huge tremor would be felt throughout the landscape, as obviously it would be quickly repaired since it is in their mind. Anything you imagine will be brought to you. As what would happen is Bell would use a trick. He wouldn't think of a binding keto that would stop Aizen, but Aizen couldn't break out of it, as a huge pillar would fall from the sky, as it would go to, surround Aizen in his zone, and pretty much Aizen can't get out of this. As Aizen would look around, as he would say, interesting, you used a keto that I couldn't block, and you used not your Ryatsu, but the power of your mindscape itself. And since I reside here, I'm forced to abide by those rules. But there's something you forgot. I wasn't here to start with. As what would happen is he would say, Kudakure, Kyoka Suigetsu. As Aizen would just shatter into glass, as he would look to his right, as Aizen would just be standing there watching. He hasn't even been fighting the whole time, yet he had seen Bell progress all the way to his chrysalis form. As Bell would be like, what do you mean? Until he would finally comprehend it, or finally see it. He would look down as he would see his whole body is covered in a shell, as he would say, what is this? As what would happen is Aizen would say, the stronger you evolve, the more you take on my appearance, and at the end you'll almost look like a replica, and I would be fully merged with you. But that means when I merge with you, I won't be here anymore. It'll just be you, Mr. Cornell. As Bell would kind of attain a solemn look. He had truly liked Aizen's presence in the world, because he's never met someone like Aizen. But I guess that was the point. You were supposed to meet people you didn't really know or didn't have much characteristics like everyone else. Someone who is unique. Someone who can't be replicated. As he would kind of put on a sad look before he would get back to training. As Aizen would say, don't worry, my life was already over. I already became sulking in my world, but everyone else who pretty much had a part in sealing me away was either dead or really old, so it didn't feel like much of a satisfaction. But there's gods and goddesses in this world who rival even my power, but now you have the power to go above them, superiorly above them, like really above them. But what would happen next is he would train as Aizen would help Bell gain his butterfly form, as this form would just be Bell with basically long white hair, as obviously he wouldn't look exactly like Aizen, like with the brown hair. He would still have his usual red eyes and white hair, as his hair would grow longer. And this time he hadn't noticed, but time in this landscape went differently. It was distorted. Every second out there was like a week in here. So Bell was constantly growing, as he would see that he had like really long white hair, almost down to his middle back. As he would see his eyes, they looked more hollow now, and they had like black, like his pupils were still red, but around it, the surrounding it of his eyes, they turned black. As Aizen would say, don't worry about that. That's just your evolution. If you want, you can go out of this form and go into your base form, I guess you would call it, and you wouldn't have the same long hair. But it's all your choice. As Bell would kind of, shake his head, as he would kind of laugh for some reason at this, not laugh maniacally, but just kind of chuckle at the power he has attained. He remembered the first time he came into Arario. He was just a weak little boy, and nobody would ever recruit him, at least not until he met Lady Hestia, and that's when he started discovering spells. That's when he bought the sword, and that's when he met Miss Sosuke Aizen. He was curious what would happen if he had never met Aizen. Would he be the same? He didn't need to worry about that now. So after all the training, which would take a while inside the landscape, it would be like around 3 months, but if you really do the math, that would be like 12 seconds outside. So pretty much after the training, Bell would thank Aizen, as he only has a few more days, I guess you can say, or weeks at the most, before he's fully merged with Bell, as there'd be certain percentage count on how fused he is. The more power he uses, the more Aizen is fused with him or merged with him. So right now he started out about 10%, but it's gonna get higher and higher from there. As Bell would wake up, or I guess wake up from the inner world, as he would still be in his bed, and it'd be around the same time as he would look at the clock. As he would look down, as Hestia would still be there, as he would just rest for the night. He had been training for 3 months inside his, mindscape, so he definitely deserved it. As he would sleep for the night, he would wake up the next morning, as he would get up pretty early, getting his familiar members in their training routine, as he would start to train them in weapons, I guess, weaponship, you would call it. I don't know if you'd call it kenjutsu in this verse, but would start training them how to use their weapons properly, as in this world they didn't really use katanas as much. I mean, he saw the sword princess Aiz Wallenstein, but he had never really seen anyone else use a sword proficiently. So he had taught everyone how to use a sword, and sooner or later they'll probably be known as the familia who use swords quite frequently. So after the morning training, he would make everyone breakfast as he would head out. Now, after wondering, where is Bel Cornell heading to? He's heading to Lady Hephaestus' Familia house. Now, once he would get there, he would see all the Familia members either wielding weapons or just training with their weapons, as he would see Lady Hephaestus and request, to speak with her. Obviously, if you don't know, the Golden Gates, the way to get into the upper world, were made by Hephaestus. So yeah, Aizen is now, or Bel is now gonna ask Hephaestus how to pretty much get into the upper layer of hell, because she's the only one that knows. Maybe Hermes knows, but other than that, no one really knows. As he would walk up to Hephaestus, as they would be in her office, as she would be sitting in her by her desk, as Bel would say, "So, how's the upper world like?" As Hephaestus would be like, "It's a random question, but I don't mind telling you." So, in the upper world, multiple gods, they just rule over Olympus and the other Greek nation that's a little bit below them, but still technically in the upper world. As there's multiple gods and goddesses who haven't descended yet, like Athena, and then it goes to the spirited Shinto gods and goddesses like Tsukuyomi, Izanami, and Izanagi, which aren't really technically gods, but aren't technically human either, but they're spirits. As then she would start to explain all the gods and goddesses that didn't descend, and like I said, Athena, I don't think a lot of the gods descended, so that I'm not really sure about the exact number of the people who are still ascended. So pretty much Hephaestus would explain that there's only one way to get up there, but they tell everyone that it was impossible to get up there, which Bel would have a secret smile as he realized once they killed the black dragons and all the gods and goddesses went back up, Bel would find a way to go back and finally enact his plan. But he wasn't actually still sure. Maybe this way isn't actually usable for humans, at least for him, but sooner or later he'll ascend above that. As what would happen next is Hephaestus would explain how the gates are made, and pretty much the only way to break them is if you would have more power than all the gods put together, and that was almost impossible. Or another way is to have the presence of a god. I guess your body just had the aura of a god in a sense. She couldn't really put her tongue on it to explain, but Naruto, pretty much knew what she meant. So what would happen next is he would leave, heading over to Hermes. Hermes in this timeline had become Bel's best friend, almost like they had become drinking buddies at that point. As once he would get there, Hermes would kind of welcome him with a wave, as Bel would sit down next to his friend, and Hermes would start to explain to him, "Do you happen to know your parents, Mr. Cornell?" As Bel would say, "Not really." As Bel would say, "I only lived with my grandfather. I don't really know about my grandmother either, but or any other relatives. As Hermes would say, what if I were to tell you that I could know where your grandfather is? As Belle would say, that's impossible. He's dead. I don't know how you're gonna do that, Lord Hermes. As Hermes would say, come on, drop the Lord. It's just Hermes, you know. As Belle would say, all right, Hermes. How did you find, my grandfather? As Hermes would say, well, the thing is, your grandfather can't really die, and he didn't die to start with. As Belle would say, are you saying what I think you're saying? As Hermes would say, yes, your grandfather was Zeus, and your grandmother was Hera. Obviously, it's stated that anytime somebody says Belcranel, they said blood of Zeus. Obviously, this can be symbolic, but come on, it's literally saying blood of Zeus. How do you get that wrong? So, pretty much what would happen is Bel would widen his eyes. He had finally figured out the truth, and he would ask him where. As Bel would say, I can have Lady Asphyte, pretty much Hermes' close captain of the Familia escort you there, the one with the invisibility cloak. I don't think it's really a cloak, it's like an ability, but pretty much Bel would obviously accept as him and Asphyte, I think her name is Asphyte, I might be wrong though, but they would head over to Zeus's Familia home where he was residing. None of the family members were there since they were all killed by the Black Dragon, and him and Hera had to, disappear. Now, once Bel would get there over a long journey of going through the deserts, the snowy mountains, and once he would get there, it would have been beautiful, almost like a spring-themed house. There would be flowers everywhere, and it looked almost similar to his mindscape. As he would go up to the house, as once he would get there, he would take a deep breath before opening the door. Now, once he would get there, he would see this tall man with white hair and quite a lengthy white mustache. As obviously this would be not mustache, but like beard. As this would be none other than Zeus. As Bel would also see Hera. These were both of his grandparents, as Bel would start to tear up seeing them alive and well, obviously not caring whether they abandoned him or not, since that did build his character, as he truly did not really care at that point. Now what would happen is Zeus would say, I see Hermes has told you. So, Belcranel, right? It's been a while, hasn't it? As Bel would look over to Zeus as he would say, yeah, how are you? As Zeus would say, oh, you know me, I didn't want to have to deal with like the whole Familia thing or the status checks constantly, even though I have no Familia members, but I know constant people would pester me about it. But sit down, let me hear about your journey, and then I'll go over mine. As Bel would nod his head, he would go over as he would sit down. As once he would get there, sitting down, he would start to go over his journey. About right after he, quote unquote, died, he had pretty much grown up learning, with his short knife, just a dagger at that point. And he would have told him how he got to Rario, how he met Hestia, and how they became married, I guess you can say. It was unexpected, of course, but it still happened. Then he explained how he gained the interesting powers of Sosuke Aizen. As Zeus would say, Sosuke Aizen, you say? As he would say, yeah, you want to see him? As Zeus would start to shiver, as he would say, he would look away, as he would be scared of Sosuke Aizen. As Bel would say, don't worry, he doesn't bite. As pretty much she would get out his sword, as obviously Hera would see the beauty of the sword, since Hera is actually quite interested in weapons, I guess just interested in anything that has any elegance or beauty in it. And Zeus would be just as interested, but even though he doesn't really use weapons like that, he just uses his lightning art, he forms lightning, he is the god of lightning at that point. So come on, what do you expect? So what would happen next is Bel would manifest Sosuke Aizen, as he would be sitting there on his chair, as he'd be in his Mugen form, the bandages, not the bandages, but the ceilings, as he would get up, as the seals would fall off, as he would go into the Bleach Soul Anniversary. I can't forget it. It's like Aizen's angelic form. I might put it on the screen. Just might. I just might, okay? But pretty much what would happen is Aizen would introduce himself to Zeus and Hera, naming him, obviously saying, "Hey, I'm Sosuke Aizen." Zeus and Hera. I'm very honored to meet you. You are pretty much the strongest gods and goddesses out there. As Bell would say, see, he didn't murk you. He didn't kill you just from seeing you. He didn't output his Ryatsu on you and disintegrate you, even though he could do both. As Zeus would kind of laugh as a sweat drop would run down his face, as they would then sit back down with Aizen just manifesting tea, which would be quite a surprise to them. But obviously didn't say anything. Aizen was actually very good at making tea, as you see in the the Arankar arc. He had been shown to be drinking tea. I don't know if that was Tozen making that or him, but for now it's gonna be him. But pretty much Bell would start to finish his story of how he pretty much found the sword and it called out to him. At that time, he explained that everyone who touched it had died, as Aizen would explain, anyone who wasn't worthy were killed by my Ryatsu due to it not being compatible with the user. But Bell Cornell seems to be compatible, so he of course started to learn some of my abilities, like Kaizen Sannin, ultimate hypnosis, or my advanced knowledge of Kido, Ho-Ho, and Hakuda, and Zanjutsu, of course. As he would explain that the first time in the dungeon, as he pretty much killed a minotaur on the 5th floor, as he met a sword hero, Ias Wallenstein, as Zeus would say, as he would start to get perverted and all, as pretty much Bell would say, he would show his hand, as he would kind of be frown at Zeus's perverted nature, as Zeus would be smacked on the head by Hera, as Hera would tell them to continue, kind of starting a comical moment. Now, pretty much Bell would start to resume his story with him pretty much defeating the Silverback, then going down to the middle floors after getting advice from the elf maid that lived in the not lived in the tower but worked in the tavern. Then after that, his experience of how he saw Hestia's goddess form, or at least a fraction of it, as Zeus would say, let's just say that was pretty strong. As Bell would say, I got in a fight with a level 5 hunter, and that guy, he just started shaking. She was all about sheath their swords, and Broski just nah, I'm just kidding. But basically, he just dropped his sword so fast, he wasn't trying to die. As obviously, he would explain how the dungeon didn't like that, so it wanted Hestia to constantly use her divine form so she can go back to the upper world. And and then he explained how he defeated Goliath and everyone else until he just explained the story. I'm not trying to make this video might be really long if I went over the entire story, but pretty much what would happen is he would explain all the way to the present day, and how obviously Zeus would kind of be a little disappointed about how Bell would work with Freya to kill another goddess or god, since it didn't seem very organized, but he knew that Ishtar was pretty evil, so I guess it was deserved. But working with Freya, that's something he never predicted to be from Bell. As Bell would say, you're probably wondering why I would work with someone like Freya. Well, I discovered you have a new species in the dungeon, and she's probably the strongest familia in Orario, excluding the Icolos familia or Ernest, since he owns the guild and owns the dungeon. So pretty much he would explain that he wanted to bring the Zenos out, since they were pretty strong, and if they joined him, they could finally feel the peace and coexist with other humans, as this would kind of be the first step to peace, and hopefully the end of the dungeon of constantly going down there and finishing or starting, or I guess continuing the cycle of killing dungeon monsters and dungeon beasts and floor bosses, as Zeus would see Bel's ideals and he truly liked them. But Zeus would say, so I assume you're probably gonna end up by taking over the upper world, I assume, right? It seems like something you would want to approach, right? As Bel would say, of course. Me and Aizen after this would start to merge with myself, as we would have to defeat the black dragons, and after that we would have to find the way to get to the upper world by going through the golden gates. But other than that, we should be able to beat everyone and finally bring peace to this accursed universe. Or yeah, I think it's a universe. I may be wrong though. But whatever cosmos it is. But after the meeting, him and Bel, Aizen demanifesting, and Bel and Asphyte heading back to Aurario. Now, what would happen next is Bel would we'll do a time skip. It'll be like about 1 month. Now, in this month, him and the rest of his familia will start to train, with him using the Hokyoku to bounce his familia up to level 2, level 3, and with Haruhime's help, the level booster, they would be like, most of his family members would be at least level 3, with some of them approaching level 6. For some reason, there'd be a huge growth rate of people leaving their familias to join Bel's familia, with people like Aiz and some of the Loki familias joining, like Finn. They would join Hestia's familia, which would be shocking, and Loki would kind of be a little crushed at first, but Aiz would tell her that maybe they should merge their familia with the Hestia familia. Not that it actually been done before. The only time that happens is when you beat the other familia in a war game. But Loki agreed, as they realized that if they want to beat the black dragons, then they would need to work together, as the Loki and Hestia familia would merge together, as so would the Take familia, as Lord Take. I don't want to say his full name, it's really long, but he was the more peace type. He was the one who yearned for peace, and he was obviously up for the idea of going to the upper world and having having Bel be the deity. Obviously, so would Loki and Hestia. That was kind of the main requirements of being able to merge their familias together, as pretty much they would start to go to other familias and convince them or buy them out, as they would start to widen their familia, as they would be probably the strongest familia in all of Aurario until they came up to Ernest. Now, what would happen is Bel realized he needs to get rid of Ernest while he still can. He realized if he were to kill Ernest, he would just go back to the upper world. He needs to erase him from existence. Now, Bel came up with a Kido that outputs his Ryatsu, sort of like Hawkeye, and erases the opponent from existence, or the enemy from existence, as he's going to try this on Ernest. So what would happen is he would go meet up with Ernest, as he would see the invisible person with like the weird Reaper hoodie on, and pretty much this person would escort him to Ernest. Now what would happen is Bel would start to say that he's gonna go down into dungeons and retrieve all of the Zenos, offering them to join up in the upper world, since that's what they yearn the most. And due to this desire for that, they won't actually care about the point of joining his familia. So obviously the Icalos familia won't even be a thing after this, after all the Zenos would leave, and it's the downfall at this point. But basically Ernest would kind of become enraged as he's slowly slipping. His power of the dungeon is lowering, as Bel would start to impose his territory there. As what would happen is Bel would say, I also can't have you living either, as he would go through some incantations, as he would output his Ryatsu as a red aura, not a red, but like a purple aura. Forgive me, I meant to say purple, but I said red. As a purple aura would surround him, as he would output it onto Ernest, as slowly but surely Ernest would start choking, as his wrist and his hand would start to disappear into dust, as so would the rest of his body, as he would try to scream out, but his voice box has just disappeared. Just when he was gonna scream out, he couldn't anymore, as he would slowly but surely disintegrate. Bell would then pretty much forge a letter saying that a sort of death letter from Ernest, saying that Bell would receive all power over the guild and over the dungeon, as this would be key factor for them to kill the black dragons. As what would happen next is Bell would forge all of his familiar members as they would go down into the dungeon to the lowest level, or at least try to get there. As they'd be on the levels, they would start killing dungeon monsters and getting their magical stones. Bell would come on to a little girl. Now this would obviously be Wine, as she can't really speak at this point. I mean, she will sooner or later. As she speaks with other humans, she'll be able to adapt her speech skills much faster. But once they would, he would find Wine, he would obviously tell everyone that now this was the first Zeno to be part of their new familia. As in, they would all start cheering instead of the usual. Wine was kind of scared that they would, reject the Zenos, but not with Bell's ruling here. So Bell would then go down, as they would have that same party with just him, Bell, and his other friends like Haruhime, Hestia, Bikoto. I don't know if Aisha was there. I don't think so. Which is Bell's close friends would be down in the dungeon with Hermes coming along as well, as he wanted to see these new species of Zenos, as honestly the Zenos would welcome them in peace. As Bell and them would have a nice party before Bell would see all of their intentions, as he would erase them with a few sentences here. He would offer them all the chance to basically join him, as they can reside in the upper world forever if they wish to, and due to their weird lifespan, they would live longer than the regular human, as they would obviously accept this graciously, as they asked, what about the people, won't they reject this? As Bell would say, well, I worked with Freya, as he would remember, flashback, when Bell had went to meet with Freya to talk about taking down the Ishtar Familia. Pretty much what would happen is she would explain that Bell would kind of negotiate for an offer. He would help her taking down Ishtar, while she would owe him later. Now this is Bell, using his favor by bringing up all the Zenos and having him join his familia, with most of them being level 5s and a few of them being level 6, which would be really powerful for him. Having at least level 2s here. Most of the Zenos are level 2, like Wine, she's level 2, but like Light, he's level 5. And with Haruhime's level boost, which Bell managed to get into a drug or a enhancement pill, which he manages to reproduce, and he made thousands of Valis and almost millions of Valis. Obviously, that'll kind of just be a project in the near future, but for now, he's just getting into the research part of it. But after he got all the Zenos and brought them up, there'd be a crowd of people with, let's say, an announcement from Freya. She announced that they shouldn't be scared of them, as long as they, I guess what would happen is she explained that maybe we should learn about them, because the reason why they hate dungeon monsters so much is because they simply don't understand what they are. So maybe this will help in their lessening of their hatred, as pretty much what would happen is the Zenos would come up and start talking to other humans, as they would start to trade information and knowledge, as obviously, let's just say this would be like a new era of peace in a sense. But afterwards, we'll be going over the Black Dragons, defeating them. So they would continue to lower down in the dungeon a few days later after retrieving the Zenos, with the Zenos coming along with them. There'd be about a few thousand Familia members, obviously a lot of familiar metal, let's just say that, as there'd be about 20 Xenos as they would go down to the 57th floor, I think, where the black dragons reside. As once they would get there, they would see obviously the black eye dragon, I believe it's called, but I may be wrong. I saw the image though. Nobody actually knows about the black dragon, so anything I say here, it's off the top of my head. Anything I say here, it's made up. Okay, so it might be changed due to the release of like more of the novel continuity, as there'd be more information released. But for now, anything I say here isn't actually canonical to the story. So once they would get there, they would see a huge dragon as it would roar towards them, and obviously the dragon having absorbed Athena, the goddess of war, I believe, and the weaving, of course, as there was a whole story about how she taught as students, but in the end turned her into a spider, as she would be weaving for the rest of her life, since, like, spider webs, But pretty much she would get down there as the dragon would roar, as it would suddenly puff out, and a huge, I guess like an air-based attack, as Bell would then do Bakudo number 81. Donkyu has a huge shield. This was pretty wide. He'd use most of his, I guess a quarter of his Ryatsu. He has a lot of Ryatsu, so quarter is a lot. He'd use about a quarter of Ryatsu to make the shield, as this would block them from the attack, as all of the familiar members who had magical attacks like Ryu would use their magical attacks and go for the head. Like I said, like Aizen says, any weak spot is the head of the creature. So everyone would shoot out their any elemental magical ability, and there'd be a huge, I guess, area effect of just explosions from the magical attacks. As I keep saying Aizen, as Bell would then put a foothold in the air, as he would go like above, like in the air, for then using Hado no Kyuju, Goryu Tenmetsu, as 5 dragons, as the ground would start to shake, as everyone looked towards Bell, as he was the one increasing his energy, as his body would start to change, going into his butterfly form, as it would start to form the white shells before then go into the chrysalis, before then cracking, and then it would go into his butterfly form with his long red hair and red eyes, as his pupils and his eyes would change into that of a hollows, with the pupils obviously being red instead of yellow or purple. As Bell will then be seen as the Hado number 99 would be enhanced, gaining more power and becoming bigger, as Bell would rush towards the dragon, as it would cut off its head, as the rest of the dragons would start to destroy the black dragon's body, as there'd be a huge magical crystal. Now once you would go up to the crystal, pretty much what would happen is there'd be a huge glow, as Bell would just absorb the crystal, but something weird would pop up. There'd be a voice in his head saying, congratulations, or not his head, but a voice just aloud, as it would say, congratulations, human race. You have proved to be able to, pass the test and beat the black-eyed dragon, and for that, you have passed. Now, all the gods and goddesses will be going back to the upper world, as what would happen is Bell would then start, see Hestia and Hermes, and the rest of the gods and goddesses start to glow before then disappearing. Now Bell would feel like a momentary sadness come over him, until he realized now that he's gonna merge with Aizen and he knows the way to get to the upper world, he's gonna finally achieve his goal of becoming the deity of the universe. So we'll do a time skip for about a week. Everyone had prepared, as Bell had realized a way to basically make a portal to the gates to the upper world. Now after the whole him taking over the upper world, what I'm gonna have is I'm gonna open it, or he's gonna open it, where pretty much you don't need to go through the same process Bell did, but you're free to go whenever you wish. You just have a thought, you can go there. If you want to go to lower world, you can go there. It's just a matter of where you want to go. As Bell would open the portal, as everyone would start to walk in with their battle armor, as they'd be ready to fight. Obviously, since most gods and goddesses would fight them. Obviously, this would be more like Zeus and Poseidon and Hades. Not really Zeus, but it's kind of something he needs to do. Yeah, truly, Zeus is he, even though like Bell is his grandson, he has to abide by the rules of being a god and all. As Bell would face off, he would stand off as he'd walk in, as a uniform would start to appear upon him. This would be the Mugen outfit of Aizen, as he'd realize that he had, his hair had gotten shorter, as his evolution has truly transcended above any god. As he would see Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades getting ready to fight them, in their god forms, as he would finally look at the power, and he would be amazed as Poseidon would start to form a tsunami behind him. It was pretty big. It was like the power of like 20 tsunamis, but it would still be classified as a tsunami. As Hades would then form I think it's Hades. So Poseidon has the trident. I don't know Hades' weapon, but he would form his Cerberus, the three-headed dog, as the dog would start to run towards Aizen. It was pretty huge, as it would go to eat Aizen, like with his mouth, going to try to bite Aizen's head off. Not Aizen's head off, forgive me, Bell's head. If I ever say Aizen, just know I mean Bell. As pretty much Bell would then raise his hand, as he would say, "Poor creature," as suddenly about 100 cuts would appear over his body, as Cerberus would then have that dog, how do I say this, whenever a dog gets hurt, it starts to give that weak not growl, but like, I don't know how to describe it. It was like it would groan in pain, and agonizing pain, as it would fall over and disappear. Now Poseidon would then form his trident, as he would go to clash with Bell, as Bell would just easily deflect it, as he would slice down, as huge chest slash would appear over Poseidon before Bell wouldn't give him a chance to regenerate, as Bell would then put his finger up to Poseidon's heart, as he would then use Hado number 4, Byakurai, as a huge lightning bolt would go through his heart, killing Poseidon. I know it's like, how do you kill a god if they're immortal and all? Well, let me explain it. So, for example, when it comes to hacks, or I guess you would technically call immortality a hacks. Now, if you have more Ryatsu than the person, then usually you'd be able to your dimensionality is higher above them. So this means you'd be able to go above their abilities because you reside on a higher plane than them. So that's kind of what happened here. Zeus with the my bad. But pretty much Zeus and Hades would be the remaining gods who defied Bell or just didn't like his plan, as pretty much Hades would form like a scythe, I guess, and he can pretty much make any weapon if he desires. So as Bell would then say, it's quite interesting you stand up to me, Hades. It's funny how you're like the king of the underworld, yet your wives are fucked by Hermes. That's very comical, if I do say so myself. As Hades usually is the chill guy, honestly, he's like really chill, but he would suddenly become enraged. Obviously, just seeing this human, obviously, Bell is now like immortal and all since he's fused with the Hokyoku, but he would see this human try to look as ascended as him, or appear as ascended, or like a god to them, or to him specifically, as he would summon a scythe before going to cut off Bell's head, as Bell would just bend backwards as the scythe would miss him. He would easily dodge it, as Bell would grab his wrist, as he would break it before saying, "You should calm yourself, take a few deep breaths. Alright, you don't have any lungs," as he would punch a hole through his chest, or at least, he would punch a hole through his chest, he would punch a hole through his chest, as he would say, "Or at least now you don't have any lungs," as he would then punch a hole through his other chest, taking out the other lung, as he would say, "Now you can't take any deep breaths because you're dead," before he would then use his Ryatsu to, I guess, Hawkeye Hades at that point. It's not even Hawkeye, but it's something like that. It's soul manipulation and existence erasure. Then he would turn around as he would look at Zeus, as a tear would fall down his eyes as he would appear in front of him, raising his sword above his head, as his hand would start to shake before he would then strike down, ending Zeus's life. As pretty much there'd be no resistance against his force, as he would go through and obviously meet Hestia again. He still felt some sort of sadness in his heart whenever the black dragons were like defeated and all. So afterwards, the gods, the realms of the gods and the lower world will then be unified, becoming one, as there'd be no separation, as the Xenos would be able to go up there if they want, the gods can go down if they want, since Hermes didn't miss the world, as Bel would obviously graciously invite him there, as Bel would reside in the lower world with Hestia and the rest of his familia members, as they truly now became his family. But without further ado, guys, this will be the end of this series on what if Bel wielded Kyoka Suigetsu. Now, I hope you liked the series. I might be making a movie special of this soon, so yeah, watch out for that. But without further ado, guys, have a good day.